Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 478. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. We are under 25 episodes to episode 500. So says the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the Elder Statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
I just was looking at those numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, we really are getting to 500 shows, which is great. I'm actually really excited for that one. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Shade the Changing Girl, Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 7, and we're going to talk the Wonder Woman 75th anniversary special. Plus, we do a casual chat, which we're kicking off the episode with, on Arrow and The Flash, with a little chat about the recent DC Telltale game from Batman. And Jim, you were going to say something. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say episode 500. That's going to be our musical episode, right?
Oh, sure. It'll be like our like Buffy had one. So we're going to do ours. Yeah. Once more with feeling. We'll do the same. Sure. It'll be the all musical episode, which will be great. You'll just do it yourself. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Jim, sponsoring this episode once again is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCBService.com?
Come on, we got the bundles. You know, DCBS is doing a great job with just this continuing supporting of not only the rebirth by giving us great bundles that are coming together, and when they put these bundles together, they've got the 50% off, but they're also still doing the Vertigo supporting, where they're doing the new Vertigo titles 50% off. They're doing the variant covers, which I keep jumping on, and every time they're doing 45% off of the variant covers. And, of course, the Young Animals bundles. These are things that they keep doing this every month. I'm very happy. It helps make, this what can be a very expensive hobby a little bit more affordable. So thank you, DCBS.
I want to remind everyone they're a digital partner too, whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics. Link those accounts to your DCB service account. Do not forget to shop through that portal, because every time you go through the portal, it connects to your DCB service account, and 5% of those purchases goes towards your DCB service order. Doesn't cost you anything more, but does help our show sponsors. Over at InStockTrades.com, they've got those deals of the week that I always love to talk about. They're always 50% off. They got the Flash by Jeff Johns trade paperback book 3. It's 50% off, only $12.49. This is one I didn't know about. It's Mad released a Goodnight Batcave hardcover. It's obviously a Batman-related of Mad parodies. 50% off, only $7.49. I'm going to grab that. I didn't know that this was a thing. Nightwing trade paperback volume 5, 50% off, only $12.49. This is the classic Chuck Dixon series. Superman, The Final Days of Superman, 50% off, only $14.99. They always change those deals of the week. Those 50% off, you mentioned it earlier in your ad, Jim. Those help you with your budget as well. There's a lot of titles that I miss and books I miss, like that Goodnight Batcave. To be able to get that at 50% off, we all have budgets that we have to try and stay within, and this hobby makes it often hard to do so and to get all the things that you want. Obviously, we all have limits as far as time and money, as far as what we can purchase, but to be able to stretch those dollars a little bit more is always helpful. So thank you, InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets, DC Spoiler Podcast. Just a little kind of a sneak peek at what's to expect in episode 500. But we are a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show, as well as the Flash and Arrow TV show. So if you haven't read the books and or seen the show, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Bring. Hello? Oh, Apple? Yes? What? You said our numbers have dropped significantly on iTunes in the last 10 minutes? I don't know why that would happen. What could have possibly happened? Let's talk some TV shows.
Great molecules! They're programming the computers for a chain reaction to blow up that atomic pile!
So, Jim, I wanted to start the show today with kind of a casual conversation. This week, the brand new episode of Telltale's Batman game came out. It was episode 3. And I've been really enjoying this. Actually, one of the things I can say about the series, at least from my perspective, is it feels like with each episode, it's come like it's gotten better. The game's increased. In the beginning, it felt like an introduction, the very first episode, and you see a lot of promise as far as where the game can go, and you actually have this feeling like the choices that you make, who you choose to save, what actions you take, mistakes you make along the way, times you choose to be Batman, times you choose to be Bruce Wayne. You feel like they're going to have impact, but you don't know. Those are things that you have to see as later episodes play out. And episode 2, and I think now episode 3 have really shown me that this is a game series that has some legs to it. And I'm really hoping it's successful. I look at the trophies, and the trophies will tell you how commonly they're redeemed, right? So as the series has gone on, now episode 3 just came out this week, so it's very common that a lot of people, especially this time of year, the fall is when all of the new big games come out. So it's common that maybe a lot of people haven't played episode 3 yet because it just came out on Tuesday. So those are still considered to be very rare trophies, meaning not a lot of the players have grabbed them yet. But I hope that's not a sign for the series that people have lost interest along the way. As I mentioned, episode 1, the only criticism I have, and it's not really a criticism, it felt like an introduction, a prologue to something larger. And 2 and 3 have shown that something larger. It's a much bigger story for Batman. So I'm hoping it's 5 episodes altogether for this series. And I'm hoping that along the way, people will continue to give this game a shot. And I would, for anybody listening, if you're a Batman fan, you're like, oh, the first episode didn't quite give me the bang that I was expecting on this, do go back for 2 and 3. It's well worth it. And it's a game series that I'm really enjoying. And I do feel like I'm living in Batman's world, and I have an impact. It's like the old point-and-click adventure games, Jim. So, it's that type of gameplay in it. But it's mixed with action sequences where certain button combinations, it's kind of like the quick timer events, like in games like Shenmue and stuff like that, where you've got to be on your toes and ready to hit certain button combinations. And I'm talking, this is when we get into combat. There's certain combat sequences where you really feel like you're trading blows because of the immediacy of what you need to do. And not making certain moves affect like your build up to the meter, like, where you can get to your finishing move, if that makes sense. But then those would also be the times in the game where you can be taken down. And very rarely does the game have you taken down where you quote unquote die. When you do, they kick you back to the beginning of that and you can go through and try to complete the sequence. But overall, what I really like about it is there's this rich story of a mayoral race. There's a rich story of the history of the Wayne family, whether or not Bruce knows everything he should know about his past, or the past of his family members, especially considering they died when he was very young. A lot of history of Gotham. It feels, I'm going to say again, Elseworlds, which is what I said, I think, with a lot of these games in general. I quite like that, because what I feel like is, as a Batman fan, they get Batman right. They understand all the tools that we like with Batman, but very similar to the TV show Gotham, they don't feel like they have to stick to what's going on in comics currently, and I think the game's freed because of that. So it feels like just a great Batman story that they're like, okay, listen, your writers can take this and make this into a really great game set in a Batman world that feels very familiar to fans, is accessible to a new audience, you really feel like you have impact on. So there's a lot going on, both in and out of the costume, for Batman. The detective sequences are some of the best that I've seen in a video game. So it's fun. I feel more like I'm the Batman detective than I am the crime fighter, with the action sequences, and I like that. I like seeing the smart side of Batman played out in this. It's just proof that you can do a lot of different kinds of Batman stories. So honestly, I texted you and I said, can we wait till 3:30? It's because I was literally in the last sequence of this particular chapter. I didn't complete it yet, but I know I'm on what would be because I know how many trophies I've gotten. I know I'm on what would be the last sequence of the whole thing. The interplay and the relationship between all the characters are great. I'll tell you some of the characters are in it because that doesn't really spoil anything. Harvey Dent's in it. Commissioner Gordon's in it. Alfred's in it. Catwoman's in it. Falcone's in it. So there's a lot of people. Mayor Hill is in it. So there's a lot of people that you normally would expect to be in a Batman series that are in this. And you really do get this sense of immersion. Oswald Cobblepot is in it. It's great. It's really something that I'm just enjoying right now. So I wanted to shout it out just because I think it's a great series. And actually, from our listeners, if anybody's playing this, I'd love to hear from you. Are you digging this or not? Just because I know the first episode got some mixed reviews, and I can see why, because, the big criticism was, I think, what I just said. It felt like a prologue, but I'm really digging it. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
I'm loving this series, to be honest. And
are you playing it?
Well, yeah. Hey, we're looking right now. The Tribe is up 3-1. You can't count the Cubs out. You can't count them out. The Cubs are a really good team, strong hitters, good bullpen. So until you get Game 4 in there, that's right now that's the only series going through my head, man. Those who don't follow baseball, the Cleveland Indians are up 3-1 in the series with. Game later tonight. After we're done recording, I'll be watching. But yeah, it's been a really good. I think this has been a really good World Series. Not just because the Tribe's up. There's been a solid pitching. And just some great defensive plays where each game you have that one inning where the significant boom, something happens, and that decides the fate of the game. So I think for me, those are the kind of games I really like, where it's just a constant battling back and forth, and you have that one moment where if he had made that one error, if he hadn't thrown that one pitch, the game would be dramatically different. So I'm digging it.
Here's the thing: are you a big baseball guy?
I'm not. I used to be a really huge baseball guy, and I kind of dropped out of baseball and just focused all my attention on the Browns. And we all know how well the Browns are doing. So when the Tribe made it into when they started going in the postseason, that's when I started following them again. And just so these last couple, the series I've been watching big time. So it's this is a really good time right now to be a Tribe fan. Just need one more win. Just one more. Come on, man. We just need one more.
Yeah, I guess I would say I'm a fair weather sports fan. I'm not a big sports guy in general as far as watching them, but I do love seeing Cleveland teams do well. And obviously with the Cavs and everything that went on there, that was exciting. And I've been following them since LeBron James came back, just because it was interesting, with him coming back. But now, having them won a championship, and now Indians are turning into having a championship. It's just nice. I guess what I like to see, kind of very similar to comics, and actually is a big tie to, our own fandom and geek culture. I like seeing people happy. And so many people are just really happy with everything that's going on at the moment in Cleveland sports that I'm just happy for them, if that makes any sense at all. So that's the part that I'm really digging. The games have been great. You mentioned the whole strategy of the pitching piece. I'm really digging that, and that's something that I've really enjoyed. We've got some great pitchers, and the Cubs have been very competitive. So they're not boring games, where it's like one team is dominating. It's more there's a nice tete-a-tete, which for me in a sports game, I want to see the drama unfold. I want to see a really good game and really feel like when I'm rooting for a team that there's a reason to rally behind them versus, oh man, it's boring. They're just plowing through. That doesn't excite me the way that this does. This has been a lot of fun. So it's cool.
Yeah. And to answer your other question, no, I'm not playing the game.
You should.
I should.
Yeah. For similar reason.
Right now, I'm just trying to get caught up on everything else. I can't introduce something else. I can't introduce something new. I don't have the time for the hobbies I have right now.
Does that bother you, though? Because here's the thing right now. I guess, we've talked about that a lot recently, and I think you and I were kind of alluding to that this week. We were trying to determine the content for this episode. And I'm finding now that I guess at some point in time it's clicked for me that I just have a lot of freedom right now. What I mean is my schedule is crazy. The time that I used to be able to devote to reading comics is not what it used to be. And it varies from time to time. It's like a roller coaster. I'll have some Sunday mornings where I can get up and go, you know what? I got Sunday morning. I finally got some free time. I can really sit down for a couple hours, just enjoy reading and enjoy that experience. There's other times where my schedule just doesn't allow for that. TV's the same thing. So, our favorite shows are all back right now. Now there's 4 of them that are tied into the same universe. And there's Gotham and, Lucifer. And, there's a lot of just great stuff. And that's just the DC shows, not including the great Marvel lineup that's out there right now. And everything else outside of that I really enjoy. I'm having a hard time keeping up with everything. But here's what I like. I'm not reading or watching nonsense. I'm like really enjoying all of like just a lot of great content. I don't mind like the fact that, okay, when I want to sit down and get caught up on Flash, I've got 3 episodes. Great. I love that show. So I guess I've freed myself from this sense of I have to stay caught up. It's there for me when I have the time. And when I have the time, that time is quality time. And I would say that the same thing applies to comics right now, which I'm really enjoying. So I guess I don't feel this overwhelming sense of disappointment. It's more of I'm just really glad that I'm really maximizing my time by enjoying the games that I love when I have the time for them, the TV that I love when I have the time for it, and the reading that I love when I have the time for it. And that's, besides comics, I like to read novels and things too. I don't have time for that. But there's, again, I've just got a real nice stockpile of great content versus stuff that I'm not enjoying right now. So when we set up this episode, we kind of embraced where we're at right now and set up, like, what shows we're going to get caught up for this episode? What comics do we want to talk about? You threw out Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. I'm really anxious to talk about that book in general. We're going to talk about Shade the Changing Woman, which is a book that is brand new, part of that new Young Animals line. And we're going to talk about the Wonder Woman anniversary issue that came out. And I'll talk about starting off with Flash and Arrow. But do you feel like this, and there's not a right or wrong answer on this, because I've gone through various times in my life where it was very stressful to the point where I stopped enjoying myself because I was so worried about my building stockpile. I'm at the point right now where I'm like, well, this is reality right now. I'm busy. I'm taking 2 classes besides the fact working full time. My job now has much more demands on it. My wife and I just moved. I'm trying to sell 2 homes. It's just, I got a lot on my plate right now. I'm finding that I've just accepted that and I'm happy with that. And I'm enjoying my hobbies a lot more because they are my break from all of that versus this pressure of I've got to be always caught up. Where are you at on that, though? Because I've been on the other side of it where I'm like, this stresses me out.
Well, you know me well enough to know I'm always stressed out. Everything stresses me out, and unfortunately, that's just nature of who I am. And so when I start getting the stockpiles, when I start getting all that does get to me. But it was funny because when we started getting ready for this, for the episode, I had a lot of Flash stockpiled. I had the Arrow episodes stockpiled, so I had to watch all those. And it's funny as I'm watching, going, man, this is cool. This is awesome. Going from one episode to one, I watched like 3 Flashes and 2 Arrows, or I think I watched like 3 episodes of each. Yeah, I had 3 to go through on each of them, and it was just. I went boom, 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 which is kind of neat when you just sit down and do that. And by the end of watching episode 4, that was a kind of a cool marathon to have. And,
yes.
Same thing with the reading. I was behind on Hal Jordan, on the Green Lantern Corps. And so I had 4 issues to read on that. And I was like, oh, okay. And you just knock it out. And, and it's kind of a nice just sit and do it. And it was funny because after reading Hal, I pulled out the Green Lantern issues because I was backed up on those, and I figured, let me just do an all green thing right now. And so I got caught up on the Green Lantern titles, and then after reading the Wonder Woman 75th anniversary, I'm like, let me get caught up on Diana. So I pulled out the Wonder Womans and I read those. So it was kind of a neat little. My Sunday was a nice little kind of block of reading, and it was kind of cool. So it is one of those things where I was stressed out, and now I'm like, oh, okay. I feel a lot better now. I feel good.
So let me ask you this. Like, when you end up, binge watching some of those episodes. Actually, let me do this before we go into that one, just to further clarify, as Jim alluded to. We're up to episode 4 on both The Flash and Arrow for season 2. And I know that we do a normal spoiler warning, but I just want to clarify that before we start having this discussion, because we're going to get spoilery and kind of talk casual, I think, about both seasons and what we're liking about them. I know we talk about the specifics of the comic issues that we're going to talk about, but I don't want to ruin this for anybody if you're not quite there yet. So when you get to binge watch those shows, because I get the binge watching culture now, which is, I'm not quite a binge watcher where I'll, do a whole season of something, but man, I've had to do the same thing with some of these shows, and it's a lot of fun to watch these in a sitting where you can watch 2 or 3 episodes at a time and really kind of look at the connecting threads of what's going on, things that they're alluding to within the season. in the Flash in general. Can we start with the Flash? Let's just start talking about that.
You know,
so we've had Flashpoint kick off in the first episode. I didn't really realize, I figured that was going to be a whole season thing. I didn't realize that they were going to do Flashpoint. Barry was going to come back very quickly, and we were going to see the after effects of the changes due to what Barry did. Barry went back through time again. He saved his mom. Recognized that it just ruined things for so many people that he had to go back in time and let it happen. Through that event, when he came back, things were different. Iris was no longer getting along with Joe. There was, obviously, Wally and Joe had reconnected. Mm-hmm. Caitlin has been showing signs of being Killer Frost, you know, the powers, at least, of Killer Frost. The brother of Vibe was killed, and Barry is sort of to blame in the sense that, you know, Vibe's looking at it like, why didn't you save my brother? Why didn't you go back in time to save my brother? I asked you to go do this. It would actually set a lot of pressure on there knowing that. And I really like how that piece was being addressed in the show. You got a buddy who can go back in time and fix things. Why wouldn't you do it for me? You did it for yourself. And I was glad they addressed that. Then you had, of course, Harrison Wells come back. And you've got
HR.
And you've got Barry now having a new special person working with him in the crime lab who may or may not be a villain. I don't know. I've got a weird, like the clock's ticking down on him, right? I think go ahead.
First off, he most certainly is a villain. He's right. Draco Malfoy. Come on.
I think he is.
He's got to be a villain just because of that.
I think he's alchemy.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking alchemy immediately, you know, because, as I said, it's Draco. You know, he's a bad guy. He tried to kill Harry Potter. Come on. You got to, you know, make him the villain. But part of me so wants it to be a swerve.
Sure.
I so want this guy not to be a bad guy just because I think it would be so cool if he wasn't the villain and we would completely throw everybody off. You know, but the funny thing is I don't know who it would be, because by this point in time, I can't see the general Hollywood and the way stories are crafted on TV. I can't see them not making it him, even though for me, that would be the greatest thing if it wasn't him, just because it'd be such a huge swerve. And maybe the show will do that because they've done swerves and they've done some cool stuff that, you know, you don't see coming. So I don't know, but my whole guess is he's alchemy. He's the bad guy.
When I mentioned Harrison Wells, I also forgot to point out Jesse Quick coming back, and we finally got to see Jesse Quick implemented in the show, and I thought that was really cool. This is a show that really has done a great job of doing what I love about Arrow. You take a large cast, and you make everybody important. Barry sure is the central connecting thread, and I absolutely adore Barry. I think the casting of this show is really top-notch. The relationship with Iris just continues to get more and more interesting with me. I like that it's not clean. You know, I like that they're in a world where Barry is the Flash, and there's Barry outside of being the Flash. And if you try to separate those two worlds, you lose something of the person, because all of those pieces make up Barry. And I like that they're exploring that. And, you know, just getting to see how do we balance our relationship amongst this. We can't ignore that I'm the Flash, because if we do, we lose a piece of me. And I've really loved the relationship exploration between the two, but also the fact that Barry's been living with Joe. Joe's been like an adoptive father to him. And now he's dating the daughter, which is very weird when they're under the same roof. It's an interesting sort of conundrum and puzzle. And I like how it's led to Barry needs to get his own place, and Joe, you know, needs to learn how to overcome it, and Iris is playing into it too. I love the fact that this feels... They take all of the tenets of the real world, right? Because we've all been in that awkward situation of the meeting the parents. How much are you able to show affection and not show affection in front of parents? And those type of things. I think we've all been able to connect with those experiences from time to time before. And then they put that whole superhero spin on it. And who knows the identity and who doesn't. And it just makes it very, very connectable. I feel like I'm in this world. I feel like this world is very real. And they cover everything. The cast is phenomenal. There is not a player on this show that I would get rid of. And I would also add the villains into that mix. They do a great job of casting the villains. Mirror Master was a really cool, and the top, and what they did with the top, I thought was really, really a cool way to expand the rogues and bring them in. I was glad to see the cameo of Captain Cold too, because I just think he's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I wish he could. Maybe, well, who knows? He may still. They may, with all the time traveling thing that Barry's done, he may still be alive now. You really don't know, and I think that's one of the things I'm happy with Flashpoint, with how they're doing this, where there is tweaks and there are changes. Like they changed stuff over in Arrow universe, where Baby Sarah is now Baby John Jr. With anytime there's some type of weird explanation, they can very easily change little factors around. People who are dead could very easily be back again. And I think, that's kind of a neat little avenue for them to go with. I'm still hoping that they use Flashpoint as a way to explain Batman and Superman being in this universe, which I think that would be a neat little twist where have someone mention,
Jim, Superman is in this universe. He's on Supergirl.
But he's not. But Supergirl's not this universe.
Yes, she is.
She's an alternate Earth.
Well, but I think they're changing all that. She's part of now this universe.
Well, yeah, she's part of this universe, but it's an alternate Earth. I'm talking on this Earth.
I don't know that she's not now.
You don't think you think she might be?
Well, here's the thing. There's supposed to be a big 4-part crossover with all the shows.
Right.
So either they're going to bring her in from her universe. I don't know how they're going to do that. And they could bring her in from her universe. I don't really care either way on that one. Okay, let's go to the Batman piece. And because Superman, I technically Superman is you're saying you want Superman in this world. Okay. I could see that. So what are you saying? You want multiple Supermen then? Do you want the Superman that's on Supergirl and then another Superman for this universe? Is that what you're saying?
I would have the same actor play both. I would have it, the Flash Green Arrow Earth, whichever Earth that is now, has a Superman now, or has a Batman now, or something like that. If they don't want to do if they want to keep Superman only on the Supergirl show, cool. But maybe introduce Batman, because how neat would that be if everyone's just throwing out like the Team Arrow throws out a comment about Batman and Flash just looks at him, who? Batman, big scary guy dresses like a bat? No idea who you're talking about. Like, whoa, Flashpoint. Just little stuff like that I think would be kind of neat if they just throw – and because they've done it a couple times now already with the Flashpoint where there's a little change, and it's everybody knows it. It's common knowledge to everybody but Barry. And I think Batman being that kind of common knowledge thing would be an awesome – it would be a great introduction to just the concept of Batman in there and kind of explaining why – because before in this universe never had a Batman. So we introduce it suddenly, boom, pop him in there. I think that'd be kind of neat.
What for? And I'm not arguing with you on this. I guess here's what I'm saying. Like, Superman and Supergirl makes sense because they've referenced the character since the beginning of the show. And I really like the way that they're using him, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't want to say too much about that. Well, actually, next episode, I think we have to talk Supergirl. Just because. Are you caught up on Supergirl?
No, I'm behind on Supergirl. I got to get caught up.
Okay, so we're not going to go crazy into that, other than the fact that, and we'll have to put this in the spoiler warning. Supergirl, I've watched all the episodes. I'm current on that one. So the character is on Supergirl, which was a big blurb in the ad anyway. So we'll leave it at that. But it makes sense for that show to explore that because of the fact that it's been a tenet of that show since the beginning. So I'm not really against the idea. I think that when you've got a character like Batman and Superman, right, they're larger than life, and we want them to have some substance in the show. I think Superman is a character that's had substance in Supergirl, and I'll leave it at that for right now. We'll follow up with that. Batman, though, is a character, if I want him in, if he comes in the show, and they're going to start referencing Batman himself, I'm not talking about a wink and a nod to Wayne Enterprises or Luthor Corps, the stuff that they kind of do on these shows, where they reference other things that are within the universe, that Batman's one of those guys, like if they do a big crossover, right, and it's universe spanning, right, where there's a reason for Flash to team up and Arrow and for the Time Masters to come back in and to take some of these background characters that they have team up with them sometimes, and Supergirl, we bring her in. My question would be, if we're referencing the big scary bat, why wouldn't he get involved? Now, my Geek Fest would be if they tell the kind of story where he would. And that would be my ultimate wish from that. So I'm not against it. And I actually like your thinking. And so this isn't Jim's idea stinks. I don't mean it. I really don't mean it that way. It's more of once you start referencing a character of that caliber, it'd be like referencing Wonder Woman in this universe, right? What's natural next? You want to see them and you want to see them with some substance. So that would be, I guess I would rather, if they're going to dabble in that, where they specifically reference him in his operating, that it would lead to some form of appearance. And I don't know where the doorway is for the show to do that yet. I don't see it, because there's so much going on with the main characters, and the new characters that they're adding in, I don't know where you'd fit him in yet. I like it, though. Here's the thing. For as much as I'm saying this nonsense as I'm prattling on, if they made a reference to him, I would be like geeking out. So everything you just said, if they did it on the show, I'd be like, yeah, that was cool. But there is that geeky part of me. Like, what would I really want for it? If I had a wish list, and that's what I'm throwing out right now, would be if you start heading down that path, I would love to see him at some point actually on the show. And I don't know that they have a need, because I think Ollie is the Batman of this TV universe. I mean, he fills that archetype, if that makes sense. So I don't know that there's a real need for Batman in this world, mainly because of the fact that we've got Gotham on TV right now, and I kind of want to see where it goes in that universe. The geek out would be that Gotham somehow takes place in this world. I mean, that would be, for me, let's tie all this up into a really nice bow and make the TV universe one big thing. That would be my ultimate geek out on this. I don't know you need that either, though. I think Gotham works as its own police drama. But I don't have a lot of argument for what you're saying, other than I really do think he's a character that I would like to see put in with some substance.
Yeah. You see, first off, no, I 100% agree with you. They don't need to bring him in here. Ollie does a great job as that archetype, and he fills that role. And it's, when they first started creating Arrow, they said, okay, but you could very clearly, tell, okay, this universe's Batman. That's why this universe doesn't have a Batman. This is the role that's filling it. This is the person that's filling it into it. And I agree. They don't need to pull him in. The show's not lacking anything, and they don't need to pull somebody in for that pop or star power or whatnot. But for me, I think part of it is the geek mode I would be into, because as you mentioned, if they did that, I'd be like, I'd giggle like a little schoolgirl just because it would be so cool. But then for me, I would say you use that as just that pop, and then you follow it up like the next season. That's the setup. Like, in my head, the ideal usage would be the last scene of the Flash show this season would be someone making reference to Batman, and the final scene of this show is him going, "Who's Batman?" Because that way, during the whole next, waiting anticipation for the next, what's going to happen next would be, oh my God, they're bringing in Batman. And you could do a whole season where they're bringing Barry up to speed on who Batman is. And you can do the tease and the build. And you could spend a whole season just building up the fact that, yeah, there's this guy who's now out there, and Barry using Barry being Barry, maybe Barry can figure it out. Or, it's, some kind of crazy, where they could really do it where they make it the next year's big event is the Batman, whereas this current year they have this current thing going on. So it's, again, they don't need to do any of this. The show, the way they're going, is absolutely wonderful. I'm digging, and especially really loving this whole Flashpoint story they're doing with Barry, and just how things have changed, and they're introducing how something's changed. And here's a little tweak that happened before. Here's something different Barry has to do, and just a little modifications. But this is just one of those things that as soon as Flashpoint happened, as soon as they started doing this, where the world isn't exactly how Barry knew it, and they can make a sudden change. First thought that popped in my head was Batman. I'm always going to be a Superman guy, so I'd love to see him in this one as well. But to be honest, I think Batman would fit the best in the way this storyline goes, especially because this Batman's a guy who's been a vigilante he's a non-powered vigilante. So they don't have to worry about metahuman with him. And he could have been operating in the shadows for years, long before, Arrow came to be. And it wasn't until the pop-up of the heroes that the Bruce donned the costume and all that kind of stuff. So they could actually even have it, continue with a lot of the lore of Batman, where he's been just this urban myth for years that if you didn't live in Gotham, you really didn't know about the Bat, because it's a Gotham thing. So there's a lot of different things they could do with this. And that's,
Here's my inherent problem with that.
Okay.
What you're doing is now you're turning Arrow into Batman.
Right. I know. And that is a problem that could get very dangerous, So it's one of those things where if they never did this, I would never feel cheated, because I'm getting a great story. This is the no lose situation we got going on here. I think, if they bring him in right, they do the cool Batman story, we got a great Batman story. If they never bring him in, we still have great stories going on in Arrow and Flash and Supergirl and Legends of Tomorrow. So we have great stories already. So we're good. Could this be something else? I don't know. I part of me would love to see it, but part of me doesn't have to see it. I'm not going to feel cheated if I don't get it.
Here's why I don't want that. In the way that, here's the thing. I want what you're presenting, but what you're presenting is a Batman television show. You really are, because you're starting to delve into it, which would be my big worry. You're delving into it with so much depth that, we now lose Ollie and Team Arrow. They become a supporting cast for the Batman story. I don't want that. I would love the Batman show you're laying out. I think you've got a really cool idea, and I'd love it set in this universe. So I don't know that we really disagree on what we would love to see. Here's what I don't want, though. I love tuning into Arrow. I love tuning into The Flash. I love the way they introduce characters like you're referencing. I think I would like Batman to be handled how Superman is on Supergirl. If they did it, it's an interesting challenge to keep it from going too far. Because you don't want to lose what's great about Supergirl right now. And this isn't spoiler. It's Supergirl. I really love the actress. I love the characters around her. I love her world. The same thing with The Flash. I love The Flash, that he's the centerpiece. I love Arrow because Ollie is the centerpiece. The Legends of Tomorrow works as a great team. I wouldn't mind seeing a great Justice League show that addresses some of what you're talking about, where you can take these, the problem is, you can't put Flash and Ollie onto that show. So, maybe you do a Justice League show where it's an ensemble cast and you do some of that. I don't know if we need another ensemble show with what they've got going on right now. There comes a point where you don't want one superhero show to derail the rest. I think we've got a Batman series in Gotham going right now. So we've got a Krypton series that's going to be coming to Sci-Fi Channel. I'm anxious to see what that piece is going to look like. Would I love more Batman, and would I love the Batman that you're talking about? Sure. And as you talk about him as a guest star, that's great. The problem is you're starting to build more of Batman's taking over the show now, and it's gonna become the Batman program. As a geeky Batman fan, I can't believe I'm saying this. I do not want that because I am so in love with Team Arrow and the exploration of that dynamic. I wouldn't mind seeing him as a guest. I just don't know, how do you build a villain that requires that need where you have Batman make a guest appearance, but he's so willing to back off. And it may be because of the fact that the villain's set in Star City and Batman needs to be back in Gotham. You could do a story like that, and I'd love it. So I'm in. So if they're going to go if they would ever go that route with it, which I think is more of what you're really alluding to, I'm in complete agreement with you. That would be super cool. I don't know that they would do it, although I didn't expect Superman to be making an appearance. Right. And I think that's great that they did. So my geek out would sure be a Batman I guess I would say I would want it handled the same way they're currently handling Supes. And if they do that, they've got me. I'm in. So yes, for that. I would want those parameters on there, though, because I don't want to lose my main players. I don't think they need it. I think, would it be cool? Yes. Would I want to see it? Yeah, same way. So yeah, I guess it's kind of a wordy way for me to come around and say, yeah, I do agree with you, but I really want some limits on that. Only because I want these characters protected. I love that they've taken, instead of doing the natural, they started with Arrow. Would have been the easiest thing to do is start with Batman. Do a Batman series, live action Batman series on TV. Starting with Arrow was a different sort of tactic. It led to a great Flash series, to the point where I'm excited for the film version of the Flash, but man, he's got a lot to live up to because the TV Flash is brilliant. I'm going to go see it on the big screen. I'm probably going to really enjoy it on the big screen, but I'm going to be comparing it to the TV series because the TV series, to me, DC's TV right now is the home run. I love their TV. I'm not taking anything away from the films, and I'm not backtracking on anything I've said about like Batman v Superman's Ultimate Edition. I love that. I think it's great. But as far as what's really hitting a home run for me, DC's TV. Their TV is phenomenal. This universe is great. It's exciting. It's hopeful. It's the characters have flaws, but it's not. It doesn't go so far on the darkness. There's a light that's there. And it has to do with the well-developed supporting cast that even Ollie could be argued to be the darkest character on all the shows, right? But even him, when he goes there, it's everybody surrounding him are your latch-on points for the light side of it all. And I think it just really represents to me what the comics are like. So would I love to see a Batman done that way? Yes. Gotham right now is, I think, of just a phenomenal program. I'm enjoying what they're doing there. Would I love them to tackle an older Batman show? Yeah. I guess I would want that more than I would want him to be a cameo guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny because we both want the same thing. We don't want to lose what we're getting because we're getting something fabulous. And that's first and foremost, we don't want to lose that. And again, it's the greedy mentality that I do sometimes have where I'm like, I've got this one wonderful thing. I want 1,000 things just as good. I want this. Give me more. And I keep reaching out for more. And I think you when you run into that, you run into the problem where you're going to dilute it. So on one hand, I'm saying, yes, I want that. But on the other hand, with a lot of the stuff you said, I think if they started introducing it, it probably would dilute and we wouldn't get, everything. And if they weren't doing a full Batman TV show, I would feel kind of cheated. I'm like, no, I want more. It's kind of weird with me, and because we've got, as I said, we've got great stories coming out of this, and I'm absolutely so loving the Flash that I remember when we've had past discussions where I'm like, okay, what's better, Flash or Arrow, and I always go back and forth. I tell you, this past season, as much as I'm loving Team Arrow, Team Flash, man, I really dig what they're doing. And I got to say, for me this season, Flash has been edging out Arrow. Even though Arrow's got some really powerful, cool moments, there is just that something of Barry. I really dig the way they've created him. I've liked them in the past, but it's just something this season, you're really seeing the flawed nature that, where he wants to help everybody. And you say, that's not a flawed nature. Sometimes it is, and we saw that with him wanting to go back and pass, run back and pass. And it was to the point where I love the fact that they brought in Jay Garrick to stop him. When he went to do it one more time, he's like, no, you got to stop going back. You just got to go forward. You just got to keep moving forward. And I love that mindset. And that was the final way that Barry stopped trying to change the past. He's like, the past is the past. It's not, you're never going to make everything perfect. All you can do is deal with the consequences and go forward and keep running. And I thought that for me has been just the strength of this Flash season, especially since we still have these ramifications coming from Alchemy. And we've got the stuff it's obviously Wally's going to be tempted by Alchemy to get his Flash powers back. And will Wally take the bait, or will there be something else? Are we going to get a Kid Flash? Are we not going to get a Kid Flash? What's going to happen with Wally? And I think that for me is a will he, won't he kind of situation that I'm very curious to see what happens with him. And same thing with Snow and, the return possibly or of Killer Frost. There's so many different things that this show could possibly go to, and it can drift in, throughout it. You're always going to have that constant that is Barry Allen fighting, for the light. And I think that has been just, again, this great part of this story.
Yeah, I think that's why I was almost arguing with myself as I was doing my little rant and rave, because I totally get where your thinking's coming from, and I agree with it. I mean, I get where the passion is because they're doing so well with all of these characters. We want to see them tackle the bigger characters. The Amazon TV series that was previously announced, I really wanted to see that because, right, all of these characters work in long form. We're comic fans. We like the immediacy of more. So I get it. I'm with you. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Here's, as you were ranting just now, though, I think what really nailed it for me is you were talking about all the things you wanted to see out of this show yet. And I wouldn't want any of that to derail that. I want to know the Wally, like the Wally piece. I'm like, yes, Wally's so good right now. I want to see him make that, what does the choice look like? Because that's where this is heading, right? Alchemy is going to be a point. And it is to the point where the sequence where he threw himself in front of a vehicle to try and spark his powers just shows where you're at. In this world, you've got friends around you that have been through similar experiences to you. They get powers. You didn't. How would you not? Like, you and I are geeky superhero fans. If one of us got super speed and the other didn't, and we went through the same event, wouldn't we wonder why? Wouldn't we want to know? Could this happen to me? It would be very interesting. There's a jealousy component, but there's also a what could I do with this? I want to be this person, and I think there's a very real reality to that when you see those things happen. Why them, not me? That comes about that I think is a very natural human reaction to a situation, especially when everything's equal. And I loved the budding relationship between the two of them. Like, I wanted Jesse to say, I'm going to stay so bad, just because I really liked the growing relationship between the two of them. Really great writing this season with characters who I'm just finding myself adoring.
It was funny because you mentioned with Jesse staying, because when they started searching for a new Harrison Wells for this universe, part of me so wanted the Harry from Earth 2 to stay, not just because of Jesse and Wally, but just because I really dig that character, right? I really dig that version of Harrison Wells, and so they're pulling in a new Harrison Wells, which is cool because the actor's awesome, and they're gonna let him have some quirks and some interesting, with the character and play it off a little bit different, a little bit more comedic, So I'm like kind of curious how that's gonna go, but it's one of those weird things where you're like, yeah, I want this, but I don't know if I want this. I want the Harry. I want Earth 2 Harry.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing. I love Earth 2 Harry. He's been so well developed. It's funny how you can have the same actor. First of all, I'm with you. Knowing that we could keep the same actor, okay, I'm in on that because he's great. I liked the exploration of the multiple ones. I was so hoping the payoff for that was going to be that they decided to stay, that she had a reason to stay here. But they do have a life back on that world, so it's interesting, this exploration. I'm glad that it looks like they're going to be reoccurring. If we don't see Jessie Quick again, that would be a mistake, because I think the actress who plays her is really fantastic. And it's one of the things that we love about the show, I think, is the fact that these characters have become so well defined that you want to defend them. For me to want to defend these characters to a Batman being a focal point says a lot, because you mentioned being a Superman guy. I am a Batman guy. I mean, there's no doubt about it. If it's Batman, I'm in. The idea of me, if you told me like 5 years ago that there would be an opportunity to have a real discussion about having Batman on a show as a regular character, a reoccurring character, on a limited capacity, I would be like, well, Batman would just take over, and you'd want him to take over. Why wouldn't you want that and all that? Now I'm animately arguing against that with somebody who's a Superman guy. I mean, that's weird. I mean, and it shows a lot for the quality of these shows that you and I are thinking beyond them. Like, you're passionately thinking beyond the show, which is one of the things I love about having these discussions with you, and the debates that we have over this is the fact that I think there's our debate that we just had right now between the two of us. People are going to fall in your camp, they're going to fall in my camp, and everywhere in between as far as what that looks like and what characters they want to see brought to life in this universe. But I think what's the real strength of these shows is you start rallying behind them. You mentioned Flash having a slight edge for you. I would really argue that I'm in the same place with that. Just because I think what I really love about Flash is the hope of it. Like, it's not afraid to be a happy show. And Barry's a good guy. And here's the thing. I love Arrow. Arrow's a show I almost feel like I'm cheating on it when I'm saying that Flash has got a slight edge for me, but it really does, and it's very consistent. And I think it just because it is in a day and age where everything seems to have to go dark in order to be successful, it's really great to have a show that can explore some heavy themes while maintaining the light. And Barry's show does that. And I really like that about that show. I like The Flash because it's not afraid to be hopeful. And I think Arrow does it well, too, because of his teammates. It's an interesting talk about the ensemble cast. Arrow's left in a position where his sister, through everything that she's gone through, is dropping the role of Speedy. She's like, listen, I need to live a normal life. This person I've become, the darkness. She had this bloodlust and all that. I can't be that person anymore. I need to find Thea Queen again. I love that because I love her and her new role and her passion behind why she's heading that route. Lance, being the deputy mayor, I think was brilliant because he's had to fight his own demons. Alcoholism's a very real issue. And on Green Arrow in general in the comics has always tackled these type of demons before, but also you want to see these characters come out the other side. And Quentin Lance is just a great, well-developed character that I do want to see come out the other side. That's something that I'm glad the show is tackling. You got John Diggle, who killed his brother, right? That's and you can justify why he did it, sure, but the scars that's leaving on him, and as far as was there another way, could he have done something different, his own sense of penance is something that Ollie can relate to in the show. And he went back into the military for that purpose, but what ends up happening is what'll happen in these worlds, right? He goes back into the military and he's with people who are corrupt, and they blame him for what they were doing. So now he's been framed for crimes of treason that he didn't commit. And Ollie has to go break him out. And I love how, listen, I get the penance and the moment with the two of them in that prison where, Ollie was really saying to him, but to serve your penance as Spartan, and they break out together. And, that moment where John goes, listen, Ollie, we talked earlier about your need to change or whatever. He said, there's some things that just don't change. I like that he just said, you did this anyway, even though Felicity didn't want you to do it. I didn't want you to do it. You did it because of who you are, and it was the right move. And I liked seeing, these are two guys that had been split apart because of so much that happened. To see them full circle have come back together as partners and as friends and as brothers. I think that's natural in any friendship and brotherhood to have those moments where there's times because you're different people that pivotal events are going to cause you to rub each other the wrong way. I think a sign of true friendship is that you find your way back. And seeing them find their way back, I want to see that story play out. It's so important to me right now. John Diggle is, to me, every bit as important to me on that show as Oliver Queen is. And it's a testament to that actor. It's a testament to the writing. And I really love the fact that Stephen Amell is just a great actor. The whole cast is filled with just great actors and actresses who are doing, and I think it's more appropriate not to call everybody actors. I don't know. Certainly not meant as an insult because the whole cast is just plain brilliant. And it's a great example of how to put an ensemble together that really loves being a part of this show. To me, the new team that he's putting together, whoever saw Ragman being on TV and being just plain awesome? And I guess that was another piece earlier that I wanted to speak about. I like that that's a character now that's on TV and getting some airtime and where people are getting to know this character. And I think it's natural nowadays to always go to your heavy hitters. Part of the fun on TV, like I'm going to go to Marvel's end of it. There's an Iron Fist series coming out. I'm an Iron Fist junkie. If you had told me a few years ago that, hey, guess what? You're going to be able to watch an Iron Fist show on Netflix, I'd be like, you're joking. Nobody do that. There's a Doctor Strange movie coming out this week. Doctor Strange rocks. And Benedict Cumberbatch is going to be Doctor Strange. I mean, that's awesome. These are things that, forget not just DC, Marvel's doing this now. And it's the success of things like Guardians of the Galaxy that have opened doorways to start exploring some of these characters. Black Panther movies coming out. I mean, really cool stuff. I want more of that. There's going to be a Harley Quinn solo movie. This is the kind of stuff I want to see explored, while at the same time nodding back to everything you said earlier because I don't want to misrepresent myself or even seem like I'm on a different plane than you on this. I'm really not. I want to see everything you said. I just want to also see Ragman. I want to see Arrowette brought into television. They're doing these cool things where they're taking some of their lesser known characters and really making them work on television. And that stuff is really phenomenal. The guest appearances and guest stars on these shows are just really... I can't wait to talk Supergirl next week because talk about guest appearances and guest stars, they've really expanded that universe to include some really amazingly incredible characters. Let's talk about the new team. So I just mentioned Ragman, but what do you think about the whole lineup, Jim?
Oh my God, am I loving this. And I'm so glad you mentioned the fact that you can't believe Ragman was on because that completely threw me. And I cheered when he came out. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then you get the whole story. And I loved the connection with him and Felicity, where she sent, the nuke and destroyed his hometown. But it was one of those things where she had to make that tough choice where do I kill thousands or do I kill millions? And she made the tough choice. And I love the fact that how that's been on multiple episodes. It's been eating at her. It's between the two of them. This is something that they have to deal with. They're on good place now, but they're still not at 100%. They still have to work at it, and they still have to deal with it. And it's one of those kind of things where both of them had to knuckle up, and both of them had to hero up. And I think that, for me, is one of the cool things on Arrow, what they're doing with this team, where they're introducing them, they're introducing their flaws, and they're giving them each that moment where they have to gut. It's gut check time. We've got, Wild Dog currently getting tortured. We've got Rory dealing with the fact that his family was completely decimated by a nuke. That Felicity said. We don't know what's going on with Artemis yet, or Arrowette, or her official call name is Artemis, but right. I don't know, are they going to shift that to Arrowette? Or I was thinking, is she maybe going to put on the Speedy costume and bring back Speedy, or is his sister going to come back? I don't know. And of course, you got Mr. Terrific, who I was so happy when they first introduced them. I was like, oh, cool, okay. And then the first time I saw him in the Fair Play jacket, I was like, yes. And then you see him with the T-mask on. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm hooping and hollering, and I was hoorahing the whole time when, as they're building this character, as they're building this team. And, this is something that I'm very happy about the show. And it's funny because I said how Flash edges out Arrow. That's not like knocking Arrow. Arrow is still an amazing story. It's still an amazing team. I love team dynamic. I love the fact that each member of the team isn't just an also-ran there to support Ollie. They have their own story. They have their own backstory. They have their own existence. They've got their own future. Well, some of them may be limited, but most of them are probably going to last a while. I'm hoping we'll bring back, now that Spartan's out of jail, we'll bring back Spartan to the team, so we'll have him in there because I echo everything you said about how awesome John Diggle is. But I think that is, again, the great part about what they've done with Arrow, where it started off just Ollie, and then they added one. And they slowly started building up this team, and now to the point where he's pulling in new people to replace the last team he had. He's continuing going forward, and Ollie himself is even kind of personally changing, where he's not so much a lone wolf type of thing, where he's embracing the fact that he is a team leader, and he is a leader, and he has to, not just, be gruff, Green Arrow. He's got to be a leader. He's got to be a trainer. He's got to be a mentor. And I think that's kind of a cool side of him.
And just to correct myself on that one, you're 100% correct. It's Artemis, not Arrowette. It's Evelyn Sharp who's Artemis. I kept connecting Arrowette just because of the fact that I was going through the various Arrow people that have been in DC Universe over the years. But you're correct on that. I don't think that there's going to be any shift in name because she's really meant to be Artemis, which that was my mess up, not the way that the show's intending it, which is interesting. I really do love the fact that we've got such an amazing cast of characters, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go from there. What do you think about what they've done with Curtis Holt, making him kind of the Michael Holt character? Do you like the version of Mr. Terrific that they're crafting here? Because it's a unique version of Mr. Terrific to Arrow. It's got some echoes of what's really cool about Mr. Terrific, but it's definitely their own take on it for the show.
See, I'm happy with this.
Too.
When they first introduced Curtis, I was thinking, okay, they're going to use this to introduce his brother Michael. And I was like, oh, okay, that's how they're going to deal with it. But they're turning him into Mr. Terrific, and he's not as he's more geeky than he is in the comic book. But to be honest, you think about just how super intelligent Mr. Terrific is in the comic. He's the third smartest man in the world. Well, he's going to be a little bit geeky to him. So it was kind of funny how the comic book version is a smoother version of what we got on the TV show. And I kind of like the slightly more geeky version of him. But I did like those moments when he mans up. He had some cool, just moments where it's gut check time, it's go time, and you see him throwing down, you see him fighting, you see him standing up to Ollie. That was so awesome when the three of them were standing up to Ollie, trying to prevent him from going to bust John out. That was a great moment because you see Mr. Terrific right there. You see that same type of character, that personality that we see in the comic in this TV character. And, I was I'm very happy with who he is and how it is. And I'm glad that he's not just the computer guy helping, helping Overwatch now. He is in the field. He is an active field agent. And it's, they're starting to, take him to another level where physically he's going to be throwing down with them and fighting. By the end of this season, we're going to see a dramatically different person than we see right now. And I think that's kind of neat. But, in a sense, we're going to see a different person, but he's still going to keep that core being of who he is. He's just going to have more. I think he's going to be more like the comic book by the end of the season, where he's got more physical confidence in who he is as opposed to just the mental confidence.
Yeah, I think one of the things I like about him and Ragman are the same thing. They're going to the comics to bring in some characters, and they're telling their origin stories in a way that I think is really, really cool. I like that Ragman's kind of like become to me kind of like the heavy hitter of that team, and I'm glad that they brought him in because his power set makes sense to do it that way. I really liked the team dynamic in the most recent episode with them. I like how they're starting to care about each other. They're like this subset of Team Arrow where, it's Ollie and Felicity, but they really are this young subset. I would love to see it being Ollie, Felicity, and Spartan are kind of like the mentor figures. And this remains the young team where, they're kind of building a bond and a dynamic together that does keep them sort of separate from the big three. It's kind of like the Team Arrow Trinity is, coming back together again. And it does allow for what was fun was watching them help the police while Ollie was breaking out John. I liked seeing the two different there's three different stories if you count the fact that we're going back through history story as well. I think the show pacing really greatly benefits from the way that they're able to shift to a lot of different things going on. And it felt like a comic in that respect, and I really liked that.
Oh, yeah. And now, do you see this team being a long-term thing or a short-term for this season?
Here's the thing. I like them so much. I'd love to see them continue. I think one of the nice things these shows do, and I think it's what makes them have legs, is they do what comics do, right? Things have to change, and sometimes you have to do reboots and refreshes. You have to remove characters and add characters. And, would we have ever seen a time where we wanted Arsenal to kind of go off into the sunset? Well, I would love to see Arsenal come back for a cameo, but they did the right thing. They told Roy's story. And is there room for him to come back and for them to do something on the show with him? Absolutely. They could bring him back now. So much has changed that he would be, great to the dynamic. But what's just as interesting to me is the new characters they've brought in that have kept the show interesting. I think you can go through a certain amount of change while keeping what people love about the concept fresh. And I think they've done that. They do what comics do. And it's the advantage when you've got people who really understand great comic storytelling helming a show like this. They keep the reboots a-coming in the right way. Sometimes reboots go horribly wrong when you so totally divorce yourself and disconnect from the original concept that fans are like, what is this? I think they've managed to refresh the show from time to time. Like when they made Thea Speedy, right? that refreshed the show. Her story became a subset of what was going on with Ollie in his story, and she became really interesting to follow. I think you need to do that from time to time on this show just to keep it interesting. And they've managed to really just make this, and make an Ollie Mayer, for example. Great move. Seeing that role, you've got a whole different cast that he's dealing with, including Thea, that are involved in that role that intersects with Team Arrow, but also has its own story going on that I think is just really great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's funny because, as I throw out the question, I'm, asking myself the same thing. And on one hand, I say I'd like to see the Trinity of Team Arrow come back, where it's Ollie, Speedy, and Spartan. With Felicity in the back at the Arrow Cave, dealing with the coordinating everything, and I'd like to see that 3 go back in the thing. But even as I say that, I'm still thinking, Artemis is a really cool character, and of course, Mr. Terrific he's a great guy, and they're really doing it. And I'm starting to dig Wild Dog. They do need to come up with a new code name for him. I agree. I don't know what kind of name they could go with him, and I don't know where they could go, but there's just something. I agree with him. He needs a new code name. It's just something else. I can't, in the top of my head, think of something cool for him, but he needs a cool, just something that is just, badass. And I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I think that we're not done with his story. I'm hoping we're not done with his story, but he's in a bad way right now. And I think if they get rid of anybody, I think he may be the guy they get rid of. And I'm hoping they don't do that.
I think it's too soon. I think the church story with what's going on with him, I think to lose one of those team members right now would end the team. Because Ollie is not going to keep the others on if one of them's lost so soon. Because he'll feel responsible. Right. So that will become a huge problem. I don't see that being the case. I think the team has... I honestly would want to see, right? We want to see Wild Dog rescued. And I love where the church storyline's going. I really love him as a villain in what's going on in this series. I like that there's multiple fronts going on in Star City right now, and I like that. I like the Cody Rhodes episode. I thought
Stardust.
Yes, that was really great for wrestling fans. A great wink and a nod, but also, Stephen Amell did those great things where he came into WWE, and I thought what he did was really impressive. For somebody who's not in the wrestling world to come in and be able to do what he did was great. And I really enjoyed his appearances there. I'm glad they paid it forward and brought Cody Rhodes onto the show. I thought he did a great job acting on the episode. I really enjoyed his character and how it was like another faction where they're like, this is our chance to take over from Tobias Church. And I loved seeing how all that played out. It added a sense of depth again to the world of Star City, which depth is one of the things that you can do in a television series, right? One-off episodes a lot of times add a sense of, and here's the other side of the city that you didn't know about, and here's this other thing going on you didn't know, that fleshes it out. You can't do that in a film. When we were doing our debate about Batman v Superman, you were throwing all kinds of things in there that you wanted to see in the movie, right? And in reality, looking back in retrospect, I'm like, you know what, here's almost defending you at this point and kind of going, what Jim really wants from that is to be a TV series. Yeah. I mean, because everything you were talking about, I'm like, I actually do want to see all those stories. My argument was you can't really do that in a film. I think it's a limitation of film. I think it's also something that's impressive when they manage to make it all work in film. But I geek out at this kind of stuff. They're side episodes. They're the one-off issues in comics, right? That we all like to see that kind of add a amount of depth to the universe. So it is funny how in retrospect I'll go back to, because I genuinely listen to everything you say. And I'll go back and I'll say, well, see, this is where he had a really good point there. And I do get it on what you're going for. And I see it here with this too. I love seeing those single one-off episodes. Those are fun ones. They're never a throwaway. They usually add a sense of layers to this world. Cody Rhodes is great on the show, though. I really dug that episode. I liked the nods to wrestling that they put in there without going too far.
Well, and it's funny because I'm watching the episode, and I didn't know he had done a thing on the show, and I see his name pop up. I'm like, oh my God, Cody, this is awesome. But it was funny because then they start talking about the drug called Stardust, and I'm like, oh God, because non-wrestling fans, that was his in-ring name. the actor. So, it's when they threw that out there, I was like, oh my God, that is awesome. I'm hooping and hollering, but then we get a good episode. He made a really good job, and they did a really cool with the villain, with turning him into that meta-powered. And again, it added to the dynamic of the fact that it was Team Arrow going off, against Ollie's rules, and they made this super-powered villain. And they made this superpowered villain who could possibly take over the city, who could possibly do some serious damage. But it was just that cool story where you play it out. And it was funny because you're watching this and you're seeing superpowered, super strong, doesn't feel pain. Yeah, that is something huge. I loved how Ollie took him out. He sliced the tendons. Just because you don't feel pain doesn't mean, just because you don't feel me slicing your tendons doesn't mean you need to have them. Guess what? And he's trapped. Done. I loved just that ending. That for me was a wonderful moment. One for Ollie, but also for the team. Because as Ollie's dealing with Cody, the rest of the team is dealing with the goons and dealing with everything they've got to do to blow up the chemicals, take this and that. And they had it was a really great team dynamic usage. And I was very happy with on multiple levels of that episode.
It's funny. The more we talk about Arrow, I'm like, I don't know that really Flash is my favorite. I think what's my favorite right now is all of them. I'm going to be honest, I really like the variety. Because as we're talking about this more and more, I'm like, I don't know that it's fair to say that Flash is my favorite. Because as we're talking more and more about Arrow, I'm like, I loved that sequence with Ollie. Every episode this season's been kicked butt. I don't know that I have a favorite.
See, with me, it's like, if I was giving them grades, Flash would have the 98, and then Arrow would have the 97. That's how close it is to me on the grade scale, where it's very simple. You could the one could very easily take over the other. But I'm making a definite commitment to, that saying that for me, Flash is ranked higher than Arrow. But I still love Arrow. I still think it's great. They only have one thing. I have one pet peeve that it's starting to annoy me.
Okay.
And it's the fact that I don't think Star City has razors. Because there's so many of them who should be clean-shaven that aren't. Ollie is the mayor. He should be clean-shaven when he's the mayor. Quentin is the assistant, deputy mayor. He should be clean-shaven. I'm like, dudes, come on. Now, granted, I'm not I have facial hair, so I'm not, but keep it neat, trim it up. You're the mayor, you're the deputy mayor. They have to have at least one razor in the town. Share it, guys. It's one of those things that it's starting to get to me.
I completely disagree with you on that one, mainly because it's a gritty city. They've been through so much. Quentin Lance is supposed to be a recovering alcoholic who is really just getting to that point right now. So that's why he's gritty. It's more of and Star City it's one of the reasons why I guess I was so adamant before. It's this universe is Gotham. And it really is. This universe is Gotham in the way that it's been through so much. Even Ollie's ascension to being mayor was gritty. There was nothing clean shaven about it. And so I think I get what you're saying. I know that you're into regulations and rules and things like that, and I get it. And I'm not necessarily disputing you on that, but I think what I like about these shows, and it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of thinking through what I said earlier about The Flash being my favorite. I love everything I said about The Flash earlier, but what I do love about these shows is Arrow's different than The Flash. Very different. In tone, in presentation, it's definitely the grittier show. And needs to be. I wouldn't want Flash to be this. It would ruin what's so great about Flash. Flipping back over, I'm Supergirl. Supergirl, while it's got the same amount of hope that the Flash does, because it's so big city, it presents itself very differently than Barry's show, which is more hometown. Which Central City, the whole, it has just kind of that hometown vibe, and I like it. I like the way that they're doing that. Then you flip over to the very sci-fi laden show, Time Masters. And the ensemble cast of that in and of itself gives it just such a natural change-up because you got villains mixed in with heroes. And it's really an interesting dynamic on what goes on that. I think what's working for me right now, and what would depress me, I think, more than anything else, is any of these shows being canceled, because I like them all together. I guess if I had to pick one, if you're like, Sean, you know, got a gun to your head, you have to pick one of them, I would say The Flash has a slight edge. So I would say that point. But I do feel like my experience right now during the week is, we talked earlier about getting behind on things. My big worry is being behind on one of these shows when the crossover comes, because I want to watch that in real time as it's on. So it's like this constant struggle to stay caught up because of it. And I'm leaving Gotham out of that mix because it's not part of this. It's not part of the Berlanti universe, the Berlanti-verse, whatever you want to call it, like kind of they did the Dini-verse. There's so many cool things about these shows. Is there one right now on the list that you're like, if they had to cut one, I would be comfortable with them cutting this show? Because I can't pick one. I am with you. I guess I am going to say that if I had to pick one, I would say The Flash has a slight edge, probably in the same margin that you're saying. And I get why you're saying that, but I have trouble saying it when we talk this long about Arrow because of how much enjoyment I'm getting from this show.
Yeah, see, talking cutting, I couldn't. Mm-hmm. You know, I think of all of these shows, I think probably the only one maybe I could, would say I would be okay with them cutting would be Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But I think that's, if we're going to make a cut, let's cut that one. So now, I think for me, the lowest of all these shows, the lowest ranked is Lucifer. And it's not even, it's like saying, a low A as opposed to a high A. Nothing is, for me, all of the shows are at an A level. And I think Lucifer probably, if I had to pick one of all the different shows that are based off of a DC comic, it would be that one. And even that's a tough one because I really like that show as well. I'm like, so it's one of those, gun to head, you have to pick one show that says goodbye. Okay, there. I had to make the tough choice. I had my Felicity moment where I had to make the tough choice. Okay, that's my tough choice is that show. But between Arrow and between Arrow and Flash, if I had to pick between one of those two, one of them has to go, I would do a Kirk and I would change the parameters of the test so I could pass the Kobayashi Maru. That's how I would do it. But that's those two are so strong for me that these are two great shows. And so it's when I say I pick one over the other, it's not because you can't even say it's. As I said, 98% versus 97%. So that's the grade these shows are getting for me.
So let's make it a point next week to talk Legends and Supergirl, just to get caught up on those two. And we'll go from there. And from this, go ahead.
Let me just throw out one more thing to you really quick from Arrow.
Go ahead.
The ADA. He's the bad guy, right? Because that was my first thought, that guy is Prometheus, and he is the bad guy that's going around, and eventually we're going to get the head-to-head between him and Ollie. And whether he doesn't, I don't think he knows Ollie is Green Arrow yet, but he's going to figure it out, and that's going to be the moment between those two. I
don't know. Kind of similar to our discussion about Malfoy on Flash. I don't know. I do think one of those two, comparing both shows, could very well be exactly who we're talking about. I kind of don't want it to be him because I like him right now. But I do. I think one of those two, maybe both, are the bads in their respective programs. I'll be curious to see how that plays out. I'll be honest, until you mention it right now, I wasn't thinking him, and I think it's because I so much don't want him to be a bad guy. But when you said it, I'm like, oh, Jim's onto something there. That could very well be who it was. He wasn't on my radar as that, but I think you're onto something.
My two guys on the radar is him and that detective that Felicity's dating. Those are the two guys I'm saying are possibly him.
I lean more
towards the ADA.
Really? I'm leaning more towards the boyfriend. See, I guess I always thought it was him until you threw that out there, and now I'm like, oh, Jim might be really onto something with this, so I don't know. I did think it was the boyfriend, but I did not have the ADA on my radar. Now that you said it, I'm like, oh, that kind of makes a lot of sense. So, oh, it's fun. like
the
this
fact
kind
that we
of
don't,
stuff.
I know, and we're gonna get it. They're gonna pay off. We're gonna see this. We're gonna get the final answer eventually by the end. I'm thinking season finale is going to be Arrow versus, that's going to be the final fight. Or is season finale going to be Arrow versus Church? And this whole season is a setup for next season where it's Arrow versus Prometheus.
I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, I don't. Or is it three front warfare? I don't know. Let's see. But let's get back to TV shows next week when we talk about Supergirl and Legends.
Cool.
Now I can get out of here.
Jim, our next discussion is going to be about Shade the Changing Girl, issue number 1. Cecil Castellucci is the writer. Kelly Fitzpatrick is on colors. Marley Zarconi is the artist. Sadia Temofonte is the letterer. Becky Cloonan, main cover. Duncan Federico and Tula Lotte on the variant covers. Molly Mahan, associate editor. Shelley Bond is the editor. Gerard Way and Jamie S. Rich are the consultants. Shade created by Steve Ditko. Now, I'm going to admit, first of all, apologies for any name butchery. I have a very loose understanding of Shade the Changing Man. I read some issues of it, but they were partway through the run. I never have read the whole run of Shade the Changing Man. So I understand the basic premise and concept, never like I understood it with this issue, because this is kind of kicking us off with the concept at ground zero and getting kind of an idea of what happened here, where it's this alien that's taken over this girl, this alien who really wants to escape from her own culture to be a part of the Earth culture, but there's also this sense of, do I stay at home? Do I stay here? And this duality. It was trippy at first, but as the issue went on, especially in my second read through, I'm like, oh, I'm really getting this, and I kind of like it. It's very unusual and strange. Once I understood the concept, though, I really had to get there first on what was really going on. I do love that the people's general reaction, like when the girl wakes up, when the alien wakes up, and there's all this crazy, trippy stuff going on. I like that it was scaring the people that were there, because I think as a reader, you have this kind of reaction of kind of like, whoa, at first. And I found myself connecting with that. I loved the writing on this for that, because it didn't ignore what we were thinking as we were reading it. This type of thing is usually my cup of tea. I like this kind of thing. It's very Vertigo-y in the sense like that. I'm thinking a lot of stuff like Moonshadow and stuff like that. This is, my kind of wheelhouse. I know for you, these kind of stories typically are either a thumbs up, thumbs down, or somewhere in the middle for you. Where were you at on this one as far as you read through? Because I know there's a right or wrong answer on this one. It's a very different book.
Yeah. Very different book is a very good, accurate description of this title. I'm still undecided. I've read this thing like 3-4 times now, and I'm still confused. And it's not even like the story that's not being told. It's no knocks on how the story's told. It's just I'm having a hard time getting my hands on what everybody sees, because some of this stuff I think she's the only one who sees some of this the trippy stuff, whereas people are reacting to it, but they don't physically see like a tiger walking down the halls, or they don't see the colored balloons and this and that. I don't think everybody sees all this stuff, and that's the part where I don't know what exactly is real and what's not real, what's being seen by the alien wearing the coat of madness and what's being seen by the people because this alien's wearing this coat of madness. But with that part of it, you put that aside, the story being told is kind of neat in that, we've got a great backstory on who the host body was and what kind of wonderful person she was, and this crazy weird alien who watched this old Earth TV show who thinks that's the way life is like in Earth. So she's coming into this society going, hey, this ain't how it was in the TV show. What's going on here? And she's trying to figure out what's going on, who she is, and where. And I think that whole kind of weird mystery is a cool story being told. It's just, for me, I'm just trying to get a grip on what is reality, what people see, who sees what. I think once I get more comfortable with that, I'll probably enjoy the story even more. And as well as when I start really getting an understanding of who this alien is.
I think they see more than you think. Look at the first page. So the equipment's being knocked over. And I think that's really happening because what happens is she's invading, this alien is invading. And honestly, it reads different the second time through because once you know what's going on, to see this event, like, is reading this the first time through the first page, I'm like, what just happened here? And I like that. I'm into that kind of trippy stuff. But it's a girl who's not really dead. She's like brain dead, but there's enough of her there still for this person to tap, this alien to tap into, to know her backstory and her history and what happened within snippets. So I think she's discovering things along the way. But I think that equipment's really getting knocked over. The girl in the bottom left, the bottom picture, you see that girl? She's clearly looking at the blue elephant. The guy's being licked by the giraffe. I don't know if they actually all see these things, to your point, or if, like, because of the fact that I don't know, though, because these creatures follow her afterwards, and people seem to be reacting to it. You got a point, because the phone call to the parents was, can you come get her because she's freaking everyone out? So the question is why? I don't think we know 100% what she is seeing and what she's not, but there's definitely something happening to the environment because of all this. I just took it that little girl really is seeing a blue elephant standing in front of her.
Yes, and that was part of me. I was like, yes, I thought so. But then I started thinking maybe they're just reacting and they don't know why. And she sees all the crazy stuff, but nobody else does. They're just like, it's kind of like the coat or cloak of madness or whatever its technical term is. That's driving people crazy. And they're freaking out. Like, you got the one guy, he's laughing. The other dude looks like he's kind of like my eyes type of thing. And another page where the one dude's got the skull, the skeleton, is sitting there and he's hunched over. I don't know if he's actually physically seeing a skeleton there, or later on in the issue when the family's faces are all rotted. And I don't know what exactly people are seeing, or if it's just the reacting, that's kind of the way to interpret, for us as a reader, to interpret what they're feeling. You see the craziness, you see the colorful colors, like, yeah, wow. And then you see the freaky skull, the freaky walking skeletons, or big blue elephant, and stuff like that. I think for me is the thing that I'm trying to really get my handle on, what we see, what we don't see. I think but it's funny, as I'm saying it is a cool story that's being told. So I'm definitely am curious as to issue number 2, but I'm still trying to figure stuff out here.
I think they do see it, Jim. I do. I think they see it, but it could be one of those things. You talk about madness, right? Okay, I'm seeing visions. I'm seeing things that shouldn't be. Things are happening in front of me. And then that's, I think, how your body processes it. Your mind processes it. It's like, this can't possibly have happened. I can't possibly have seen this. So I think it's that. I might be wrong on that, but that's kind of how I'm taking it, is that they do see these things, but they're, in the way that they process it, they're like, I can't possibly be seeing this. She's freaking me out. She's causing me to see these things because of the craziness around her. I don't know. Because clearly the two people at the desk, I'm looking at the main page where they've got the writer and artist and everything like that, the creative team spelled out. These two people at the counter, they're freaked out. And the guy on the ground is freaked out. So they're seeing something, not just her. So I don't, I would take it that they're seeing all this crazy stuff. Her parents are an interesting twist, because they're going back here, and their daughter wasn't exactly the greatest person in the world. So they've gone through this whole scenario right now where they've been through a lot with her in the past. They've now got bills that are excessively past due. So they're in what looks like, financial ruin because of all this. Because even on the counter, you see late bills and things like that because of what's happened. They signed the papers for her to be pulled the plug. Their journey was at an end. Now all of a sudden she's magically back, brain dead back in their mind. They're like, oh, who even is she at this point? And I liked that story because I'm interested in them, what they've been through, what their relationship with their daughter was like prior to this. So this is where the book's starting to hook me, is the piece where you start to see the family reacting to all of a sudden their daughter coming back inhabited by an alien, having to try to figure it out. Here's what happens. What happens if they all like her as this better than the original girl.
I think they're definitely going to like this version better than the original girl, because they really did a good job of laying down the fact that she was not a nice person before. The parents, she completely ran roughshod over the parents, but also all her friends. She was the mean girl. Big time, and you saw that in those clips. I loved how the reason she's brain dead is because her friends drugged her and let her drown. That right there is an indication that you're not a nice person when the people who are your quote unquote friends let you drown. That's kind of going to be an indicator of who she is. And I think that is going to be the interesting side of this, because she is not going to be that same person, and how much of her is going to be angry at the friends when she starts, if she realizes what her friends did. Which is she going to have some backlash against them, or is she not going to care, or will she never completely remember? Will the friend, those are the kind of stuff that I'm curious to see how this alien inhabiting the body is going to deal with the other stuff, and how are the friends now going to react to her, and what are they going to try to do? There is some cool stuff. There's going to be some cool story elements being told in that. Plus, there's a lot of mystery in me where I don't understand this universe. I don't understand the Shade universe. So I think that's another part of this that I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, because I don't understand these aliens or who they are or anything about this code or any of that stuff.
So it's interesting when you like take a look at the aliens. My first read through, I didn't catch the word yesterday. And obviously you figure it out as you're watching through this sequence of events that this happened before what you've seen previously. So this was the actual origin of the alien going there. I started to figure that out as I got to the later pages of this whole thing. So watching this on television was like their sci-fi. They're watching this Earth exhibit and they're like, oh, okay, there's this alien world, and man, I would love to go there and be a part of it. And actually, I don't know, I had certain points in time in my childhood. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was a geeky kid and that type of thing. I'm going back in elementary school, where I probably would have looked at this and kind of gone, what a great idea, kind of go somewhere else. But then as you grow into your own, you kind of outgrow that. I related to this. I'm like sitting here like, I get it. We all go through points in time in our life where like being somewhere else or being somebody else might be cool. I can relate, but it's interesting to see how it's laid out in this story, to go to a different planet and be inside an alien who would be, in our case, it would be them. What the aliens that we're seeing. I couldn't see saying one of those, I want to be a bird person. I really want to do that. To the point where I'm not quite sure if I'll make it back, but I really want to try out this bird person thing. That part, I don't know that I could do that. It's an interesting story on that end. I really like seeing this kind of smarmy little alien world where they're like, she's like, I kind of want to get away from here and kind of be one of them for a while. And I do get the feeling when you hear her, she's not looking at doing this permanent.
No, she's jumping around, I think. And it was funny because, like you, I didn't see that yesterday comment until later when I figured it out, because I was actually thinking that, because again, I don't know the Shade universe. I was thinking, okay, that Shade was actually occupying the body, and the bird alien was stealing his jacket, and eventually there would be the reckoning between the two of them, because I'm thinking traditional superhero story, hero, villain, reckoning, time to come about. And then as I'm reading, and then you start seeing that, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. So that second read-through was different than first read-through. And I'm still trying to, again, as I said, I'm still trying to get a grasp on everything, what's going on. But it's, I do like the story laying out. The fact that, again, this weird little bird person is using the coat to jump through, across the universe, dimensions and whatnot. So it's kind of a neat thing. And, I kind of felt bad for the security guy. He got used, but in the end, I like the fact that they're kind of, and again, he may be a one and done character. He may be done, or he may become an ongoing character. This may be the hunt for her, so we may get more crossovers. I don't know, and I'm kind of curious about that. But there's a lot of curiosity in the story, so which is a good thing. If you read issue 1, you're curious about issue 2, but there is a lot of trying to get the groove of it.
Well, part of what the inherent goal of a first issue is to give you enough that you're hooked in for the second issue.
Right.
I mean, and that's kind of the key. Is there enough here? For me, yes. But I like this kind of trippy stuff. So I'm an easy sell on this. This is the kind of different that I want. Because you said it's not a traditional superhero story, and I want that. That's what I'm looking for from this. So I expected this. This is very Vertigo-y in its presentation. I like that. I'm wondering if any of these Young Animals books are going to intersect with each other. Like if they're going to be part of the same world. I don't necessarily need that. I like the theme and the premise that, like, okay, let's tell a story like this because it doesn't really fit in the main DC universe right now. Let's just tell this story of Shade. Is it possible that some of our favorite heroes could appear in this book at some point? Sure. Great. That's cool. But it really needs to be its own kind of set universe doing its own set thing with its own set rules being developed. And it belongs there. So they got me hooked for issue 2. If it continues like this is a series that I will continue following moving forward, where it's kind of a gradual, everything you're saying, a gradual understanding of what's really going on here. Her past, I'm talking about Megan Boyer's, intersecting with this alien view of it, I like that kind of stuff. That's the hook for me. Like when they showed, oh, wait, what's this? And we're looking at her end of the sophomore year. This is something, gradual memories coming back. If they make that a part of this series going forward, I think it's a smart move because that was a hook for me. This sequence where you're seeing her talk about the boy and kind of her being like a voyeur into this world, you're looking at that and kind of going, okay, I kind of get it. Now she's starting to understand Megan and who the people are interacting with Megan and what Megan's role. And to our point in this whole thing, Megan isn't a really great person. She's kind of the pretty girl who seems to have had it all. Everyone kind of looked up to her and they were afraid of her. And she was kind of a mean girl in her own way because there's that one friend of theirs that they keep inviting. It was Teacup, right? Yeah. So why do I have this funny feeling that Teacup is going to wind up being Shade's best friend? Right? It's almost kind of got to go that way, right? Everybody else is going to be out to get her. Teacup's going to be like the nice kid that's ultimately going to wind up being her best friend. Going to like this quirky new person.
Didn't Teacup end up being one of their swimmers, I thought? Well, didn't she,
Teacup wasn't there yet, I don't think.
Well, I'm talking the pool scene. The one who said, I'm not giving up my spot. I thought that was, I was assuming that was Teacup. They never said her name.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, see, and it's, that was my guess based on this because, just because I thought that'd be kind of interesting that she got into the mix because once Mean Girl was gone, they pulled her in. Now I'm thinking the neighbor guy is going to be Shade's friend.
Here's why I'm going to disagree with you on this because they said you really need a fifth member. So here's the thing. The girl was saying, I'm not giving up my spot as Plank. She wasn't saying that she wasn't giving up her spot. She said she wasn't giving up her spot as Plank. So was the other girl Plank before?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm wondering if all these people were actually on the team previously. I don't know. But you're right. There's a different number of girls in the sequence. There's only 4 girls in the sequence before.
Right.
So maybe that is Teacup. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm curious about this dynamic of these kids and what's going to happen, especially because the boyfriend, he's like, with Megan being back, he's like, hey, she's my girlfriend. I'm your girlfriend. And like, I want to see that, come down because I definitely think that Shade's not going to like the ex-boyfriend. I think that's going to be an issue. That's why I'm thinking the new neighbor, the neighbor is going to be, weird enough because he looks he's a sci-fi geeky kind of guy. I'm looking at, of course, he's got a Batman thing on his telescope. So, this guy I think is going to be weird enough that Shade's going to dig. Or not Shade, really. Is it Lorna? What's the alien's name?
I'm looking back to try and see myself. I forget her name.
It's like
Loma. She said I would be Loma Shade. She's trying to adopt a similar identity to the previous Shade, the poet.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see how this story plays out and how here's the thing. She's trying to maintain control of this. and loses it from time to time, which I think that's where things get really trippy too, where she kind of like almost pops outside of herself and then pulls back in. I don't know, that part I'm finding incredibly interesting.
Yeah, because what happens when she loses control? Because, again, I don't know a lot about this Vest of Madness or Code of Madness, whatever it is. I don't know the powers. I don't know. And that's, I think, for me, that's the hardest part I have with this, that I don't have any of this knowledge. But, again, as I said, strength of the issue is that I am curious about this. I want to see what happens with the dynamic and the team. I want to see what happens with her. I want to see if, if she leaves, if Shade leaves, does the little girl go back to being in the coma? Or does she come back? Or is there any chance that the mean girl is going to start influencing Shade? Are we kind of going to get that kind of battle for supremacy of the body? What's going to happen there? There's a lot of what ifs that can happen. And I think that's kind of a neat thing to have in this story, in that, you're introducing us to a lot of stuff and you're giving us this nice variety where we're like, okay, what's going to happen next? This could happen. This could happen, and so again, as I said, I sound like I'm not 100% sold on the book because I don't completely understand it, because I don't have the history, but it's a solid story that has me wanting to read number 2.
What history do you need? Because here's the thing, I don't have it either. I don't feel like there's some missing history. I feel this is a new story. I don't feel like this is written with the intention that you have to have some kind of back history with Shade.
Right, you don't. And I think that's what I'm saying about the strength of the story. I don't have to have that. But for me personally, I like having that. I really do. I feel more comfortable with like the story knowing that he's a visitor from another planet. He's Kryptonian. His parents were killed when he was a little. He witnessed his parents being killed. That's what made him become Batman. I like knowing that backstory. I like knowing the power sets. I like knowing what kind of what can they do? How can they throw down? What does the coat do? What does what is as I keep throwing out there, what can everybody see?
So you want to know the lore. You want to know
I want to know the lore. But as I said, the story is solid enough that without it, I'm okay with the story. And as long as they keep giving me more information as the story goes on, I think I'll be happy. Because they gave me enough of the info that I'm able to piece stuff together after a couple read throughs and kind of get a groove of it. And I do like the artwork. This was this was your acid trip, freaky psychedelic artwork, and I like that, so that was kind of neat. But this is going to be one of those things where I'm going to wonder, what exactly are we going to deal with? What are we going to get? Where is this going to go? And I think this is going to be one of those that 5 issues from now, I'm going to have. That's when I'll really have a more solid grasp on it. I'll be able to say, yes, I'm in, or no, I'm not in.
The art team's really good on this. I really enjoy the art. I think the story, the art, all of it comes together in a way that has a really good theme. So that part really works for me, too. It's interesting when you see 5 months ago and you see Teacup there. I guess I was assuming that Teacup was a part of the team, but she was kind of the one that they always picked on.
Yeah.
So Teacup eventually did show up because they invited her. But I might be wrong on that. We'll find out, I think, in later issues whether or not she was actually in. But she took too many pills. That tells you something about the friendship, that they're willing to let her drown. But maybe they're also scared about being found out with the drugs.
Yeah.
It's an interesting sort of story. Because I think it's very high school in its presentation. So I can look back at that and go, wow, that does feel very high school. And the next issue has me hooked with the next issue, The Maddest Place on Earth, high school, and you can't leave a mess on Meta without somebody noticing. So it is very, and we're not even, we got a backstory in this that we're not even talking about, which was in itself an old crazy little trip. Girl's big surprise. So again, watching a Space Ranger program and finding out that the Space Ranger mailed a fist to beat the bad guy to Gooby, or not Gooby, I'm sorry, to Girl, so that way he could take out Gooby. This stuff it was like this little 3-page story that I'm like, why did they put this in here? It was like almost putting a comic strip at the end, but I loved it. I thought it was really a cute little story. This book is like, I don't know if you like that. I thought that was like, this wasn't necessary, but I liked it.
Oh God, yeah. And again, it was little funny little bits right on the end there. And as I said, I'm into these stories. I'm going to see where they go through, and I'm giving them a read through. And these really are not in my wheelhouse. And I got to admit that there is some discomfort because they're not in my normal wheelhouse. But because of that difference and because of the craziness, I think it's part of the reason why I'm digging this.
I think for me, what ended up happening was, I grew up being a DC Marvel guy, right? Because that's what there were. And, there were Archie comics and things like that outside of there, but those were all known quantities, right? So as I got older, and this really goes back to our being in high school, that's when more of these independent, quote-unquote, independent companies started arriving on the scene, where they were telling stories that were more mature, more outside of what your normal, your big two would publish. And it was stuff like this, where you were, and you started seeing lines like Epic at Marvel coming on the scene, where they were telling, again, more mature stories that you wouldn't expect to see in your traditional superhero comics. So these started coming on the scene, and that was my period of kind of, wow, I'm really interested in this, but I don't know how to feel about it. So I kind of went through that. It's funny, I'm like reconnecting with my own, going back to the 80s and kind of connecting with me back then with every time you make these comments, because I'm like, yeah, I get this, because I've been there before. It is kind of interesting when you see these new sort of comics and this new kind of take. It's a modern version of that movement. The hard part is I wonder how these are being marketed, because they really can cater to a unique crowd, a new crowd, who isn't currently reading comics. I don't know with comic marketing now how they handle that, because if they aren't trying to cater to a unique crowd with these titles, they're making a mistake. And I don't know quite how you do that nowadays, because the Vertigo movement, why was that so cool back in the day of Sandman and stuff like that, where they started really developing this kind of bookstore trade market? Was these were titles that were delivered at a time where people were looking for that cool new thing, and they were latching onto it. So those kind of comics were cool. There was like a Vertigo crowd that didn't read superhero comics, and it was almost kind of snooty about superhero comics. I read Vertigo. I don't read superhero comics. With that kind of thing. And I actually like that. I find that kind of charming, that you can like have a subset of the comic audience, a brand new crowd that can kind of come in, that we're looking for something to grow out of from superhero comics, because superhero comics were looked at as, at the time, as the more juvenile thing by that particular set. And I think nowadays this is able to cater to, I wonder, if are they marketing it to teenagers? Who are they marketing these to? Or is it just the current comic crowd? And that's the missed opportunity that I'm seeing right now. I don't see a lot being done to market to a new audience. I see a lot being done to try and shuffle around the current audience. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but in a digital age, it'd be nice to start catering some of this stuff to toss some of these things out to people that normally wouldn't read them, and see if, they have some legs for a new audience. Because I do think this line is definitely catered to a unique crowd. I'm one of them, but if I'm your main audience for this, I think that's a missed opportunity. And I would love to see these hit somebody else. I would love to see comics get a new audience from something like this, whether it's this, Vertigo's newest, books that have been coming out, going across comics. Because we're a DC show, we tend to, talk mainly about the DC titles. There's a lot of stuff. Image is doing some really incredible work. There's a lot of really great comics out there from a lot of companies. I'm not doing them justice in this rattling on, but I don't see a lot being done to create a new crowd. And I would love to see that. Actually, if anybody listening knows of instances where you've seen marketing to a new crowd, successful marketing to a new crowd by any comic company, it doesn't have to be just a DC thing. I would love to be, what are you seeing as initiatives? What's bringing people in? Is it conventions? We have a lot of these hybrid conventions that are popping up. Are you seeing people coming in free comic book days where they're people that have lapsed readers or people who've never read before that are just checking things out? Do you see those people coming back? I would love to see or hear about instances that some of you have seen of newer readers coming into comics, because I'm very interested in that because I want this hobby around. So I get excited for books like this because I think they do cater to a different audience. But I'm more curious about, are they actually reaching a new audience besides us? Because it's fun for us to talk about this, Jim. With what, how it expands our current reading and whether or not you keep up with this. Because we have to follow up on some of these just because of it. Like, what of these do you decide to keep and what do you not?
Right.
Because you're going to be different than me on this. This is definitely in my wheelhouse. I'm more curious to see what remains in yours.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. There's just the comfort level. But here's the funny thing. I just figured out something. I just figured out who Teacup was.
Who?
If you go to like the end of the issues where you got the one scene where she's like obviously drowning, and you go the page right before that one.
Oh, the 5 months ago where she's at the top?
Yeah,
that's Teacup.
Yeah, that's Teacup with the red hair. So my guess is they called Teacup. She showed up. There's still something we haven't seen happen, because they were all dancing and swimming in the water and, getting all freaky deaky. And they called Teacup before Teacup showed up. She probably laughed at her saying, "What are you doing here? You're nothing." And then something else. There's still one more piece of the mystery as to what happened to her. Something happened that caused her she either got cracked in the head, she passed out, or I don't know. But there's something more to the story. Teacup did something.
She called Teacup.
I know. She told the boyfriend to call Teacup so they could laugh at her.
But then, here's the thing. I think Teacup did try to rescue her. This is my speculation on this.
Okay.
Teacup's the only one that tried.
Possible. Because it's funny because the last scene, you see... they're saying, what should we do? Should we call 911? No, let her drown. So who said no, let her drown?
Right.
That's the person I want to know, because I was initially thinking that was Teacup.
Oh, I don't. And that could wait. Here's the thing. You could be 100% correct on that as well. I don't know. It's an interesting sort of read. So let me ask you this question: if you had read this independent of this program, that we do,
right?
Do you see yourself? Now, having fully read the issue I'm talking about, not like would you have opened the book. Let's say somebody gave this to you and said, "Hey, Jim, check this out." You read it all the way through, like you did for this program. Do you see yourself on that first read at least picking up the second issue?
See, I don't know, man. I'll be all honesty. I don't. If we weren't doing the show, I don't know if I would. It's a good issue, but it is so far out of my wheelhouse. The show has really expanded my wheelhouse to what I was, the me before we did the show. I had I had a narrow field of the kind of books that I read. And it's through the show that my horizons have been expanded. So if say I wasn't doing the show, but I was listening to a show like this that talked about different books and different options, maybe I would have picked it up, because if me with the more expanded horizons that I have would probably pick this up. Like if we stopped doing the show today, if this was our last episode, we're done, I'm still going to pick up issue 2, 3, 4, etc. I'm going to give this a read through just because that's the way I am now. But the way I am now is because of the show, because of, expanded my horizon. So, there's enough in this, I say, for me now to say, yeah, I would keep reading it. But the me of the old that had a very narrow field, there's no way. The way I look is the way I used to look at comics and what I got out of comics and the books I liked. There's no way this kind of book would have pulled me in. But again, that's who I was then, not who I am now.
Well, speaking of a book that's pulled you in, why don't we jump to talking about Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, issue number 7.
Our next discussion will be on Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, issue number 7. First off, let me apologize to the creative team, as I am about to butcher their names, because this is an absolutely wonderful book, especially your art teams, your story, everything being crafted here. So no insult intended. The writer is Robert Venditti, with pencils by Rafa Sandoval, Sandoval. Inker, I'm going to assume it's the J is probably pronounced with an H, but I'm not sure. So Jordi, Tarragone, Tarragona. Colorist Tomei Mori, with letters by Dave Sharp, cover by Sandoval Tarragoni and Mori, variant cover by Kevin Nolan, assistant editor Andrew Marino, editor Mike Cotton, and group editor Eddie Berganza.
Jim, I got to stop you real quick. This wasn't recording. Can you go back through and do the creative team again?
And yeah, I really do want to know how to pronounce the name. So if anybody knows, please let me know, because I'm curious, because this is a really cool story. You know, the Hal Jordan Green Lantern Corps story has been something that I was like, man, I'm digging this. This is, you talk about something that's in my radar. This is 100% in my radar. This had a lot of hoorah moments of just that hero gut check time where they stand tall. And I love this Sinestro story, how it directly fed in from the last story through the disappearance of the Green Lantern Corps to the return of the Corps. Guy Gardner had some great moments. John Stewart had some great moments. Hal had some moments that I was just like, man, this is a cool Green Lantern story. This is a Green Lantern Corps story. So I'm very happy with this story.
I really like what they've done with Rebirth with the Green Lantern books. I think part of the problem in the past was they were trying to recreate what Johns and Company did, and I really liked the Green Lantern books before Rebirth, so don't get me wrong, I'm not throwing them under the bus. They were really enjoyable books, but I think what they've been trying to find is like that magic, bullet for what do we do with the Green Lantern books right now. I like the idea of, okay, you want to do this kind of shared universe with all these characters, well, then make a bi-monthly book that does that. And I like this idea. It makes sense to me. This story continues. Venditti's writing it. It's doing a great job with the writing on it. This story benefits from being out twice a month. I really enjoy this. And Green Lanterns is the Earth-based book, twice a month. I am really loving the Green Lantern books. I was very used to getting, 3 to 4 books, Green Lantern-wise, a month. I feel like I'm still getting my great Green Lantern fix. I feel like the universe feels very tight with what they're doing right now. This story in particular, this was the conclusion of the Sinestro's Law storyline, really kind of bringing us up to speed on where Sinestro is, but also the drastic changes that have been going on with Hal Jordan. And we're seeing a battle take place here that's just super incredible. And an ending I didn't see coming. And I really liked how this played out, because you got the two bigwigs of both of their respective court really duking it out. The yin and the yang, Sinestro and Hal, both of them have gone through their own changes. Sinestro in his quest to revitalize himself and bring himself back from the brink. Hal in his quest for redemption. The Corps was part of a smear campaign. Hal went on the run. He took a gauntlet with him. And in that process of his own journey, he ended up finding his way back to being a Green Lantern again. But in finding a way to craft his own ring, to kind of become Hal Jordan again, he evolved. He's become something more. And, the true kind of centerpiece of Will. And I really loved, in this story arc, the heroic journey of Hal. But I liked that Guy Gardner didn't take a backseat. John Stewart didn't take a backseat. We've got, our Earth triumvirate all having their pieces, and the Corps itself. The Corps has been significantly diminished by their own attempts to get back to our universe. And people died along the way. And I like that John Stewart has had to take a leadership role that we've known he is destined for. And seeing him in that highlight was great, while nothing was taken away from Guy Gardner in that either. I really feel like this book has done an amazing job of spotlighting those characters in particular, and I can't wait to see more from where they're going to go from this. To me, Guy Gardner's avoiding falling prey to that fear engine, or, the torture sequence in particular, I thought was one of those, that's Guy Gardner. I really liked how that all played out, and John Stewart's leadership. Because it is the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, but the other two Earth Lanterns did not take a back seat. The only one I want to see what's still going on with at this point is Kyle Rayner.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's not really out there. And I like, and as everything you said, there's some really great Guy Gardner moments, and it's funny because I am now a fan of Guy Gardner. I love, this has been the recent evolutions of Guy Gardner have been something that I really dig. Just I get the character, I understand who he is. He was always that guy who I really hated him the way he was, back in the day. So. You get this Guy Gardner where you're like, okay, I understand him. I understand why he's got the ring. I understand why he is who he is. This fits. And then you get a guy like John in there who John's still my Lantern, I think. I think he's probably I love when you get a writer who knows how to write Jon Stewart, who knows how to pull out that leadership in him, pull out those moments where, you think back to the last issue, I think it was, where they encounter the Armada that's going to attack Warworld. And initially they're throwing down the fights, but then John recognizes, okay, this isn't a complete enemy. Let's see what we got going on here. And he meets up with them. But as he's getting ready to leave, he tells Kilowog, hey, if they attack, you know what to do. So he's laying down the command just in case, but let me try the peaceful manners here, And then as he's going in, it's multiple hoorah speeches where from telling these aliens, hey, we didn't leave, we were sent, we were captured, we were thrown out of here, but we fought to come back here. We lost over 100 of us just to fight to get back to here to do our job. And you get these moments where I'm like, yeah, it's Jon Stewart. And just coming in hard and fast, heavy hitting with the core. This is the cool stuff. This is the strategery of Jon Stewart that I absolutely love.
Jon Stewart's readying a gun after that comment. I like the internal dialogue of these characters. I think that's something it's funny. I am a fan of stories that use it and don't use it. I think this was a great example of how to really use it and make us feel like we're in Hal's head, and really showing the heroic side of Hal. His journey from what he experienced with his dad, Abin Sur, bringing that all back in to the point where now it's all come full circle and he's fighting Sinestro to the point where he's unrelenting. I mean, Hal's going in he's taking on the entire Sinestro Corps and Sinestro himself because he's a Green Lantern and he is going to be the shining beacon to bring back the Green Lantern's light and to right the wrongs of the smear campaign that ultimately took them out of the game from being the universe's police force. What I've liked from this is not only seeing that from Hal, but John and his crew, when they show up on the scene, they're actually greeted by aliens, who are like, oh, thank goodness, the Green Lanterns. I mean, and seeing that he's able to rally cry them and just say, listen, here's our reality. We are a much diminished force, but if we all work together, your people, our people, which is ultimately what the Green Lanterns were, right? They were kind of this United Nations of various civilizations, bringing them together and as a police force helping to keep the peace between all of them. Well, now they're teaming up with them for a final stand against Sinestro and his crew as they come flying in. And I really loved seeing that kind of unity in everything that was happening throughout this. I just felt it was like a really well done. You talk about taking Rebirth and saying, let's revamp the status quo while not throwing anything from the past out the window. This, I thought, was a great opening arc. First 7 issues of this series have been nothing but a home run of spotlighting Hal, all of our favorite Lanterns, but also their interactions with alien races and the Sinestro Corps and their 2 factions that are currently going on. Because I'm a big fan of Sinestro's daughter. She has been to the point where her relationship with Kyle was, when that ended, was one of, I think, the bigger travesties for me. And Sornik is one of my favorite Lanterns. And I'm so glad that she's getting a great spotlight in this and that there's room in this story for her to have arcs and legs throughout all this. It's just really a well done opening arc. Robert Venditti really understands, I think, the Green Lantern verse. He understands space cop, space opera, and I really, really enjoy his writing with relation to this because he doesn't leave anything out there, and you just want to pick up the next issue and not stop reading. The artwork's been phenomenal too.
Yeah. This is one of those where we have a creative team that understand these characters, and the story being told, but also the look. Some of those moments with Guy Gardner when he's getting tortured, and as he's getting tortured, what's he do? He does the Green Lantern oath, and that's what he keeps doing it over and over and over again. And you see the pain. You see, you can pretty much guess what the kind of horrific things are doing to him, but he keeps throwing out the oath to the point where the other prisoners start rallying behind the Green Lantern oath. That was those scenes. That was a scene where I absolutely loved just seeing that, not only was Guy tough enough, he was giving strength to the other people. And then as he's giving strength to the other people, they're pulling the fear engine down. The fear reserves started decreasing. They started hitting, what went from this massive power surge of fear started dropping. Part of it was Hal doing a beatdown on Sinestro. Part of it was Guy doing a beatdown. Part of it was Sornek coming in and adding, for the rescue. I love how this was a multiple faction of, multiple front attack, ultimately leading to the big fight between Hal and Sinestro. This was a really cool capstone to this opening story. Has me eager and excited for what's going to happen, but I love the fact that it completely honored everything before that. That's something that when they did the very first Green Lantern Corps Rebirth all those years ago, that they're able to pull everything together and they made it into one cohesive unit, universe. They did the same thing again with this Rebirth, with this version of Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps. We're keeping everything that was as in place. And I love that. The fact that I don't feel like I've lost anything that I've read before.
I love the use of Sinestro with Arquillo and his crew saying, listen, Hal Jordan is mine and mine alone to break. This is an ego thing with Sinestro. We've known that's always been a thing, right? His realization that they can't take Hal. And he's right on that. So he's like, listen, clear the playing field. It's the two of us. We finally need to duke it out. And there is a sense of honor in a weird way to Sinestro. I think it's more driven by ego. But there is that piece in there that is, I find, incredibly interesting. One of the most brilliant pieces of artwork, I think, is when you flip the page from that initial sequence and you see the Green Lantern Corps flying together with John Stewart at the lead. Yeah. I marveled at that page for quite some time, just looking at the various lanterns that were being depicted there. I really think the art team in this particular issue just shined. And no pun intended. I think Green Lantern, I think for the time that we've been doing this show, has really enjoyed amazing art teams who have really taken and done some cool things. This is one of those pages where I'm like, this could be a poster without hesitation, and I would love this on my wall.
Oh, big time. Big time. And it's funny because even on the very next page, you have the head-to-head of Sinestro and Hal. Again, epic power, with the bright greens and the colorist. Full art team gives full credit, of course, but I always notice colorists on the Green Lantern titles, because when you do the colors for this stuff, you really got to hammer it. You really got to make that energy pop, and you see and you can almost feel the electricity that both of these two are hammering each other with. Just the way it's the bright colors and just the flash and the pop. It's absolutely just a beautiful book, but also you got this cool story going on, and it's something that I really dig. I have been digging, and I would continue to dig, and I'm excited. I'm excited and curious and wondering, and there's so many just what's going to happen next. What's the next part?
Yeah, it's great to see that Parallax outfit, morphed for Sinestro, because I always liked that outfit. That was one of the things I think from that whole Parallax story arc that I think just worked really well. And obviously it being done with the whole fear thing makes a lot of sense. But that page where, again, it's the two of them and my nose only conviction, that's another page that I would love to see as a poster. Just Hal and Sinestro facing off. It's just a really brilliant page. This fight between the two of them felt like an epic battle. And they gave it the right amount of screen time, because they would shift to that back to the heart of War World and the Fear Engine and what's going on with Guy. And seeing Guy taken further and further down to their most dire weapons. and Guy continuing to fight back. What I loved was the plan that was the escape that was involved with Soranek and Hal involved Guy. Knowing that Guy being at the center of that, Guy would be able to continue fighting, and using Guy's fight to feed the rest of the people that were there. Opened up the whole doorway. I just thought it was really great the way that whole played out.
Well, I like the fact that everybody involved in this knew Guy wasn't going to break.
Right.
As you think about it, back when even Jon Stewart and Kilroy are talking about it, and they were like, hey, yeah, they got Guy. He ain't going to break. Even if they kill him, he's not going to break. That's the one thing. And then it was one of those things. I love the fact that they all know Guy so well that, he's hurting right now, but he ain't going down. And I thought that for me was a really cool moment. Again, realization that they all know each other so well. They know this plan and they know how to, face, how to use each other and what's each other's strengths. The thing that the question that doesn't, run through my mind is Sornak. Is she going green? Is she going to figure out a way to keep the yellow and have the yellow core have something different? What's going to happen next with her? That's the big thing that's running through my head. Personally, I think it could be a neat story if she figures out a way to keep a yellow ring, but I don't see it happening. I see her going back to the green.
I don't know, because here's where I question that. There's clearly this secondary Sinestro Corps faction that believes differently. So do you dissipate that right away? Or is there a story to be told there? I want to see that story. I can see it going the way that you're saying too, and believe me, I'd love her to be back in the green. But I think there's a journey to get her there that I want to read. I don't care either way. I just want her to have screen time. So your presentation of it, I'm like, oh, I'll read that gladly. I think there's a larger story to be told there, but we'll see. We'll see where this goes from here. That's one of the great things about this arc, and this is how you end an arc, right? It's an opening arc. They end it with a big bang, literally, and leave us with a lot of questions that are exciting to jump back for I really want the next issue of this. And that's really how you want to feel at the end of an initial opening arc for a series. You want to be excited for all of the different questions that are coming out of it. You're asking the right question. That's the one that I'm interested in too. What happens to her after this? And she's a character who's very important to me. So they really gave her the right amount of screen time in this and honored what came before in that Sinestro series with this, which I thought was really great.
Yeah, and I'm going to take back something I said. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see the Yellow Crew continuing. I don't know what they're going to call themselves. They're not going to call themselves the Sinestro Corps anymore. But this group that's with Sornak, right there, those are the ones who are anti Sinestro. And I think they're going to figure out a way to keep their rings because those were specialized ones that he made. They're going to figure out a way around it, I think, if they haven't already. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I think here's the thing. The story that you're talking about is what I want to read. So whatever it happens with it, whatever the next step is for them, is interesting to me. And that's really important. Guy putting back on his ring while the whole fight was going on with Lyssa and Sornak, I thought was, just seeing him suit up and get ready to go, even though he really doesn't have his power. Yeah, he doesn't have a way to recharge it. I thought was just really great.
Yeah, that did chuckle with all that. Wow. He loses all the power, so now Guy's running around naked, and he's still fighting them while naked. And that was something, again, that's a Guy Gardner thing to do. He's not worried about covering up. He's worried about kicking butt. And I thought that, as soon as he puts the ring on, he's like, okay, I got to go help Hal. He's got no power in that ring. He's got nothing going on, but he's still got to figure out a way to help out Hal. I thought, again, really cool Guy Gardner moments where you show not only the stubbornness, you show the will, but you do see the loyal friend in that he's got to go help Hal. Hal needs his back. He's got to go help his buddy. And it's, even if he had powers, there's not much he could have done to help out. But the fact that, it's kind of a cool thing to see. And I want to see, I want to see more Guy Gardner. And I'm curious what's going to happen with the title called Hal Jordan in the Green Lantern Corps what happened to Hal Jordan?
Here's one of my favorite lines, because Hal's, this is where Sinestro just starts to be in awe of Hal. Hal goes, when my dad died, All I could do was watch helpless. Ever since Abin chose me, I've done my best to look out for others, my family, innocents, the core. But I was always scared someone would get hurt if I pushed the envelope too far. You know what helped me overcome my last great fear? You did, Sinestro. You gave me the will. And Sinestro's like, Jordan sees this. He's like doing everything in his power to stop that. You made an entire planet I don't have to care about. Soranik took the innocence away. There aren't any Green Lanterns anymore. I can let go. I knew this was my final flight. No safe landing, no punching out. A blaze of glory time. Wrecking everything you did. Here's to a better universe. Bam! Wow. Wow. I mean, that whole thing, the Lanterns, because Hal doesn't know, the Lanterns are left to put up a shield to save, basically their comrades. And wow, that was just an incredible piece. And then I'm like, wait, there's more? There's more story here? Like, you could have ended the issue right there. I wasn't paying attention to page count. I was just like, wow, what an incredible ending. Then you see the Lanterns connect with the Yellow Lanterns that have survived. So I'm really thinking there's a story to be told with these two groups, these two factions right here, and I want to see what it is. So that's next issue's Bottled Light, which I know is supposed to be the next arc, and I can't wait to see where this book's going. Really have done a great job of making this a series that's must follow. And I'm just so glad for the Lantern titles that we're getting this kind of quality out of them. Because we'll have to talk about soon the Green Lanterns book again and touch base with that, the Earth-based book. But I'm very Lantern happy right now. DC's doing just a really great job with its properties.
Well, and I tell you, it's funny because after reading this, after getting caught up, I had to jump back onto Green Lanterns. And I had to get caught up on that just because I was so hoorah excited for the Green books again. I was like, man, oh God, this was awesome. I got to read more. I'm like, okay, that was the last one. So I jumped on to Green Lanterns and I got caught up on Green Lanterns. I think it's one of those where when you get such a really cool story that this is an absolute great issue, absolutely amazing story arc. It was one of the, as I said, this was a hoorah core moment. I wanted more Green Lantern stuff, and reading Green Lanterns, I got more really cool, great hoorah Green Lantern moments. I think they're doing a really good job with the core itself, with the characters, with giving us spotlights on these other characters, and this has been a very good time to be a Green Lantern fan.
So, Jim, for our last discussion, let's just have a casual conversation about this. The Wonder Woman 75th anniversary special came out, and this is one of those anthology titles that brings in a lot of creative talent for the purpose of celebrating the anniversary. So there's portions of it that are clearly in continuity, portions of it which you can say, are nods and winks to the past. Lots of great artwork spread throughout it. It has an advertisement, too, for the Wonder Woman, the True Amazon hardcover that's out. And I don't know if you picked that one up. I ended up grabbing it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I actually paged through it cover to cover just to look at the beautiful artwork. So that's one that I'm probably going to start reading tonight. But really, like a cool time to be a Wonder Woman fan for this type of thing. Do you like these anthologies when they come up? Because they're unique sort of things. I quite like them. I think they need to be reserved for special situations like this, but I do think it's a great way to bring a bunch of creative talent together, give us some great short stories that celebrate a character. These 75th anniversary things that they've been doing have been great, and I really do enjoy this. Is it your cup of tea?
Yeah, big time. Definitely. You mentioned it, how it's the special one-shot issues and just that little extra story kind of thing. So for me, I've been jumping on any of these 75th anniversaries, any of these, especially when it's a new original stories. Because one of the things they also like to do is they take some of the old stories and they take some of the pivotal stories and they put them together in, kind of not an intro, but kind of like here is this person. I don't know what the technical term they're using for it, but I pick up those as well because a lot of times those are stories that I haven't read, and it's kind of a nice little, this is a good taste of this character. So for me, this one really was a wonderful taste of who, Diana is, because it just doesn't show her, kicking butt, kicking some Nazi butt, which was awesome. But it also shows the compassionate person who is working with this brain-controlled giant chimp, to also the person who's showing compassion to her enemy who the townfolk want to slaughter. No, not going to let that happen. Then it shows the person who is Diana and the conflict she has as being Wonder Woman as she has a conversation with her friend Lois Lane. These were some really cool stories that it gave you all the different variations as to who Diana is, who Wonder Woman is. And I think this was a great way to, showcase who she is and what she's about and kind of give people a feel why I'm so very happy with the Wonder Woman title right now.
Yeah, I am too. I think this is a great representation, to your point, of what's been great about the Wonder Woman title. I think it's grabbed the core of who this character is. I'm excited for the upcoming movie. It's funny. That was another one where there's been weird information leaks saying that there's problems with the movie. I don't know. Every preview I've seen of that thing just has me more and more pumped and excited. And I think this opening story, kind of taking a leap into the past, was something that, it's 1944, occupied France. I really loved seeing how this story was unfolding, and you see this cloaked figure who I started to figure was Wonder Woman, like pretty early on. And loved seeing her. I love seeing her versus Nazis. it's really great stuff.
I agree. And it's funny because the movie's not going to be World War II. It's going to be World War I, so that's a little different. But you still got to always dig because the Nazis are such a great villain. Harrison Ford did an interview, when one of the Indiana Jones with because they had the first great one, then they had the second one that people were like, so what they do for the final crusade, hey, let's bring the Nazis back in. And he even made the comment like how they make such a great villain for us to go up against, great villains for him to go up against. Same thing is said about Wonder Woman. That's just a great way to that's a good opposing force for her, and it's a good opposing force for that, to give you that true dun dun dun, let's go America kind of feeling, even though this wasn't in America. This was France. This was occupied France. This was the resistance against the Nazis, starting to fire up again. It's kind of a neat thing where you have this taking place, and that's but you still get that same kind of moments and that same type of pumped up feeling.
I love the ending of that particular story. Oh, Joan, holy liberator of France, who used the weapons of war when no other means were able, to contribute to the salvation of the world and the return of peace. Amen. The idea of the return to peace, and that's a part of Diana's, there's the yin and the yang of the war skills and the need for it to be leading to peace. And that's an important part of what makes Wonder Woman work, is that side of her, the peace portion of it. And I really liked how this story was written to embrace that side of her as well as the warrior. When you turn the page afterward, you see that great piece of artwork by Jenny Frisson, and I might be butchering her name, leading into this story of her with the animals. I love the art change. Like all the way through this, it's showing that Wonder Woman is so malleable to different art styles and different art takes. The animals are coming, and her recognizing through her relationship with the animals that, hey, this one's mate was taken. And obviously you didn't know what was going on in the first part of it until you got to that point. Very much a silent story, but her seeking really revenge for poaching and stopping poaching. And he's like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Not to me, to her. And that Predator storyline, these great, few pages stories really told some very tight scenes that had a great beginning, middle, and ending that made me just excited to read the next one. I loved the changing art. I loved seeing the different takes of Diana throughout history, because this goes back to more of a classic costume in that particular sequence, whereas we had something more current in the previous story. And then it switches to these great covers by Brian Boland, who I was a huge fan of that run. To see artwork that we'd never seen before in pencil sketch form, I mean, talk about a great combination of little stories, historical art pieces, modern art pieces. That's the part that I thought really worked for this. I haven't seen this done to this level in one of these specials, and I really loved the take on this and how it embraced all different eras of this character in a way that I don't think I've seen in these specials to this level. I don't know if you disagree with me or if you saw it differently, but that was something that stood out for me was... I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember Brian Boland's era was great as the cover artist. Look at the stuff he was doing. And I liked seeing the pencil sketches.
Oh, God, yeah. And I agree with you on that. You know, this was one of the strengths of this issue was going through these different styles and going through these variations. And I do like, you know, the look of, you know, because one, they're showing right there the one page of the finish, but I'm remembering the one that was right after the Joker one with, you know, that was a great issue, but even before that, just showing, you know, that, and it's, yeah, I'm kind of mumbling like an idiot, but I'm agreeing with you and how awesome this stuff looked, and seeing these pencils and seeing, you know, just this, I don't want to say this take on it that is such a cornerstone for who and how Diana looks.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is interesting. It's showing how historically this character has really... Sometimes she's drawn softer. Sometimes she's drawn more muscular. Sometimes her costume looks more like armor. Other times it's, you know, the more traditional, like that, you know, almost bathing suit-like outfit. When done right, they show the different layers of the character, because sometimes she is a softer character. Sometimes she is harder edged. Sometimes one version of her leads to the other version through the nature of the story. And I really loved seeing that with the character, that... the right creators, when they understand her, can really... She's a very flexible character in how she can be used by creators who really get at the core of what Wonder Woman's all about. And I love when they embrace the fact that this is this Amazon warrior that has so much more to her than just that statement. And that part really excites me.
You will abide the laws of your nation. You will not make me your opponent. I love that scene. Yeah, this is from the Giganta story. The townfolk want to start, you know, do a lynch mob on Diana. I mean, on Giganta, just for the damage she had done. That kind of stuff is one of the stuff I love about Diana. Just the fact that that's how she is. That's who she is. She's not going to let you then lynch this person. The laws are the law. This is how it's going to be. And I love the fact that even... You know, the fact that, you know, when Giganta calls her on this, saying, hey, you know, this isn't, you know, you think this is justice? She's like, maybe not justice. Maybe it's mercy. You know, the fact that we have this hardened warrior, and the way she's drawn in these sequences, it's more of the powerful, athletic build. You know, this is a harder looking at it, but she still has that mercy. She still has that compassion. That is the true strength of Wonder Woman, is her compassion, is the fact that she's not just this, you know, this really muscular woman who's going to hurt you. You know, there is, you know, the true hero in her. And I love those. I love when you get moments like this in a story.
They say they want justice. Do they know what that means? If my mother had faced Giganta in battle before Themyscira, justice would have been a swift death without remorse. Even if she were incapacitated, she would have been killed and stripped of her trophies. An offering to Pallas Athena in thanks for the victory. If Giganta had killed someone on Paradise Island, and Amazon raising a hand against her own, we would have called it a sickness. All crimes can be seen as cries for help in time, and time was all we had. A woman kills someone, and justice is death. A woman kills someone, and justice is healing her so that she will not kill again. People say truth is fickle, but justice is far, far worse. So I loved the idea of just kind of exploring what is justice and just how moldable justice is depending on where society's currently at. And I really loved it. And it led to the great line that you were talking about. And then this interview that was written by Greg Rucka with Lois Lane and Diana. I loved the Q&A strategy of this piece. And I didn't know it was Greg Rucka until I got to the end, but I kept wondering if it was meant to be present day in the way that the story was unfolding. I loved the Q&A piece on this one, just kind of the frank conversation between the two, where it was two friends, where sometimes Diana's statements would lead to questions for Lois, and Lois would lead questions back to her. The writing on this was really a great prose piece with art spread all the way through that made it look like they were taking snapshots from times that Lois had seen Diana recently.
Right. I tell you, man, this one is probably my favorite story in this special. And like you, I didn't know it was Rucka at first, but I'm reading going, wait, I think this is probably taking place currently, because when I first read this, I actually was behind. I'm behind on all my titles, but Wonder Woman is one of the titles I got behind because the craziness of work and with the World Series and everything going on in life, etc. But as soon as I got done reading this special, I got caught up on Wonder Woman. I went back and I started reading just because I'm like, you know what? I got to see what's going on here. I got to see is this actually happening? And then sure enough, this is, stuff that actually they're talking about events that actually occurred in the Wonder Woman universe that's currently going on in her story. And I thought for me, that was something even maybe, wow, this is even better. Then of course you go back through and you reread it again, after getting caught up. It's, this is an absolute wonderful story.
I agree. That was one that I really enjoyed. I liked how they did the creative team on that one. Transcription, Greg Rucka, photography with Liam Sharp and Romulo Fajardo. I'm butchering this, and layout by Laurie Jackson. Great job to everybody who put this one together, because it was a few pages taken from the Daily Planet Sunday magazine, and then Liam Sharp, writer artist again, doing this little bit where Diana was reminiscing about her home and what it was like to have lived there, and now how she is thinking back to her. I think we all do this, right, from places we've lived. You and I have both moved from our childhood homes into new homes, but there's that part where you look back and kind of remember the good times in the places where you grew up and where they were from, even though there's been changes in your life. And I really loved the beauty of that piece, because I think anybody who's ever moved can relate to a longing for, whether you moved far or near or whatever, from what it was like in the good memories of that place where you've lived before. Hopefully you have those to be able to pull from. But I related to this story big time on some of my fonder memories. It's
interesting because my folks still live in the house that I grew up in. So every so often when I'm on the east side, I'll crash. If I'm going to end up being late, I'll just crash at their house. So I'm actually sleeping in the bedroom that I slept in when I was a kid, and the same little bed that doesn't completely fit me. And it's not the most comfortable bed in the world because it is an older mattress, and my back's a little bit sore now because I'm older and my body hurts. But I tell you, there's always something about just, when I'm sleeping there that I don't want to be cheesy, say it's like I'm going home, but there is just that comfort there when I'm sleeping there. Even though my bed in my house is like 100 times better bed than that little thing that they've got in that room, but there is a comfort there, and it is kind of neat, when you wake up and my folks are there, and and I have breakfast with them, and I say hey and hang out and talk with them. They're actually downstairs right now at the house. We're going to be watching the Indians in a little bit. So it's there is that comfort. There is that home feeling. There is that. And there are times when I'm at my house, I'll think about, life back in old Euclid, and just, people I've dealt with and people I've been with and I've known, et cetera. So it's, again, like how you're saying, that was, again, really cool story to have her do the reflection. But also I like how they're going back and forth with these different styles, because you've got this great reflection that it goes on into the Age of Wonder story, which again, I was like, man, that's kind of neat. I liked it how a different vibe, different look, different story, boom, 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 how they're flip-flopping on the stories. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. And then we flish to this Fabio Moon, which I really love, the artwork in this particular one, where it's totally this kid who's inspired by Wonder Woman, and her friend, and how they got the Wonder Girl and the Wonder Woman costume, and this would be so us in a real superhero world, right? We're already geeky fans when we go to conventions and things. Imagine if these people really existed. Leading into this story where they happen to come across Wonder Woman fighting a two-headed dragon. Just a cute little fun, charming story that was in there. I wonder how they put these together, if they do like an all-call for stories and give people a certain length, saying here needs to be about this many pages, submit stories and your concepts, because it's really a nice balance. Then we go to the Marguerite Bennett and Marguerite Sauvage. I'm probably butchering that, and apologies. It's Sauvage and Saeda Temofonte on letters, where it's kind of a nod to the Bombshells, the DC Comics Bombshells book that's currently going on at the moment. I don't know. Are you reading any of those? Do you read any of those direct-to-digitals?
Not really. I think I picked up a couple, but it was just, again, it's one of those, it ended up being one of those things where I was like, I have so many titles that I'm like, I got to pick and choose some of this stuff. And that one kind of fell to the wayside. But it's funny because I'm looking at this page, and this page was a really cool, where it had a great story of her life, and it's going back to the sort of Rosie the Riveter style-esque of costume, where it's fighting the Nazis, but even showing the glimpses of her as a kid. And I love the fight sequence one where they're showing her younger, then older, and just the evolution of her growing up and fighting and just being Diana.
Yeah, I would agree with that piece. And then we get a nice 2-page spread there, which is really cool. And then a Legends of Wonder Woman piece, which is another direct-to-digital title that I'm reading, and I've been really enjoying. But I like that this one was then a knockback again. This is Poland, January 1945, and Diana is fighting Red Panzer. But the story with Baroness von Gunther and how her battle with Baroness von Gunther, she realizes through the lasso of truth what really was driving her. It was her daughter being kidnapped. And recognizing that this used to be a good and kind person and was taken down a path by things that were outside of her control. I loved how throughout the story you got to see a nice piece with Steve Trevor. And Diana's still trying to understand the differences. How can you maintain your heart in a world of war? Just that whole piece of Diana thinking through. I like when Diana sometimes has some uncertainty, and she works it through her journey, through seeing things and being a part of situations. She figures out how to properly handle things through interactions and compassion with others. That I think just really made this story. This was a very charming story to me. I really enjoyed this one. It's another great example of how you use a very dire warlike situation and turn it into something else. How you see this person who's saying, I'm not a hero. This is just how I am. This is what I would do. And it's really kind of matter-of-factly. And I think that's what a true hero is, though, right? It's a person who's not looking to be branded one. It's a person who just does the right things because it's the right thing to do. She had this underground railroad going for children to help them sneak out, and how she felt she was a failure when a family didn't see the rightness of this. And she had jars that could be used to reconnect families with their children that have been smuggled out when needed. In a day and age of technology where this stuff would be cataloged and all that, to see it done in jars and things, I really loved everything about this particular story and how it played out into the whole thing. And when she returned the daughter home and got her back to the mother, and the mother kind of turning and learning from this whole situation, it's amazing how it shows that you don't have to have a full comic book issue to tell a depth-filled story that has a lot of layers to it. And this one just really shined for me. It was really well done. And at the end, again, Diana flying off in that outfit, it just showed another era that it was just great to revisit.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, you talk about just little blips of stories and little pieces of stories. If you remember when we first started this, I was the guy who didn't like these little short clips. I wanted a full length or longer story. But now, again, evolution and growth of me and enjoyment, these kind of stuff, it really does showcase talent. It really does showcase skill that you can take a couple pages and give me a beginning, middle, and end of a story. And not only that, you can have it to the point where you're like, you know what? In just a couple pages, I got this really cool story. I got a really solid story that they could have fleshed it out. They could have made this into a full story arc. They could have added more stuff to it, but they didn't need to. It's the right editing. It's the right cutting down. It's the right trimming to tell us that full story.
Yeah, I agree with you. Then we get a nice talk about a snippet. It's this is that hardcover that Jill Thompson won, the Wonder Woman, the True Amazon. It's a snippet actually right from that. So if you like this story and the artwork, I do recommend picking up the whole hardcover. I've already paged through it I did like an art read through first. I'm actually going to sit down tonight and read the rest of it. But I did read this piece, and there's a larger story going on here. It's a retelling of Wonder Woman's life from childhood to adulthood on Themyscira. So it talks about her growth, her strengths and weaknesses growing up. It's a very cool story if you're into Elseworld style storytelling that really gets to kind of the core of that. And that that page at the end, it's not a throwaway where it says they all loved her except for one. That's a big pivotal part of the story.
Oh, cool.
So highly recommend picking that one up. If you like the artwork in this, it's this artwork all the way through. It's a really gorgeous book. So don't ignore that from this particular piece. Then we go to a piece that I really, really had a good time with. And this was fun because she's at a store with a friend, and this was great to read after what happened in the article with Lois Lane, to see her with a friend kind of going shopping and trying to pick up furniture. And all of a sudden, Human Tank comes bashing through. And you have this fun little romp through the store where she's trying to find a way to stop Human Tank, who's just really mad because he couldn't put his furniture together. It was a silly sort of comic strippy story that I thought was well placed. You'd have this like deep piece beforehand, and then you have a piece that wasn't afraid to have a little bit of fun. And that's what I really liked about this is the stories each allowed the creators and the artists to kind of express themselves in unique ways and not be afraid to tell your very, very serious emotional story or your really, really excessively fun comic booky story where this one was totally comedy. Even to the point where she's waving to him at the end. Jail cells come pre-furnished. I mean, I just thought it was a fun little romp. And I think you can get away with that when you're doing these shorter pieces in a way that you can't otherwise.
Hate Superman, kill Superman, hurt Superman.
Oh, this was really, really...
Oh, man.
The great part about this one is anytime you see monkeys, gorillas, whatever, in Wonder Woman comics, I immediately knew where this story was coming from. As I was reading it, I'm like, she's got a... And I didn't know she had a piece in this. So I was reading through it, I'm like, it's got to be her. It's got to be. Because some of my favorite moments during her run were these type of characters. So it was great to see her be able to take the classic Superman, the one that we've currently got, and to be able to tell a story where, it's not the gorilla's fault. This thing's been, controlled by this thing that's been stuck into its brain. I like that she recognized that this was going on, but besides that, was this girl face the wrath of Star Blossom? The whole Star Blossom thing was like, I want to read a miniseries featuring Star Blossom.
Yeah.
Like, she was interesting enough that I want to see, like, where does this girl go from here? She just had an adventure with Wonder Woman that looked fun. Would you read Star Blossom as a mini?
Well, written by Gail Simone, yes.
Let me clarify that. You and I are saying the same thing. There's characters that she creates that just look like fun. Or having Star Blossom as a recurring cast member in a Gail Simone penned Wonder Woman book would be fine as well. I don't care, but I loved seeing Toto, who shifted from Titano to Toto. And the fact that I like that he was Venom infused, so this is something, again, pulling from DC lore, that Diana now is going to be on the hunt for the person who did this. I want to see the follow-up to this story so bad.
I know.
Because it's a short story that really, it ends with this really like serene moment, but there's more to be told. Like, I want to see her get retribution, get and bring to justice the guy who pulled all this off. I liked that it didn't, though, because you could have wrapped it all up into a tiny bow, but then you wouldn't have had the pages to tell the Star Blossom story, which to me was far more interesting than anything else, where, she has this moment where she's hugging Star Blossom and she's like, you have my action figures, perhaps someday I'll have yours. And Star Blossom's having this moment that I think we all would have loved to have had as a kid with our favorite characters. Diana's letting her have an opportunity to fly in the invisible jet and just all the geeky stuff that we like, right? This was just really a great way to end off this issue. It was honestly the perfect piece, I think, to end off the issue. And you go from that to a Phil Jimenez piece that encapsulates the entire era of Wonder Woman. I don't know. I think they made the right choice with the creators that they pulled into this one. They really went out of their way to say, how many of the people that have really touched Wonder Woman can we bring into this and really showcase their contributions to this character? I love that Gail Simone told a modern Wonder Woman story in a way that just had that charm that you just knew it was her. And I don't know, I miss her being a part of the DC universe. I mean, I'm glad that we've got her on Vertigo with Clean Room, which is just a great book. But I would love to have her have a main DC proper book. I hope as Rebirth expands, there's an opportunity for a title for her to be involved in, whatever it is, because I think there's a lot of room for some really great storytelling from her. And she's certainly made her mark on DC characters.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because I liked, as everything you said with how the fact that she didn't just beat up the big bad monkey. It was the intelligence and just who she is. And we saw that in the run where she had, when she first started her run, where they had her sidekicks who were the talking gorillas and how she dealt with them. But the one scene in this that I really thought was a cool moment was when she's got the little girl afterwards, and she's basically, the little girl's like, you're going to tell me I'm too young to be a hero. She's like, no. Heroism is not a function of the calendar, sister. It's your life to live. And I love how the fact that she's recognizing this little kid, this girl she's not going to just dismiss her. And to the point where the fact she has her take the golden lasso. Do you vow to protect the innocent and help those in need? That for me was just a really cool Wonder Woman moment, because this is one of those things. Like, you go back to the article where it was Lois Lane, the Lois Lane article where she's talking about how as people were approaching Diana, she's calmly just signing stuff and talking to them, not because she had to, but because it was the thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Seeing this moment right here continues on with that same type of feeling and vibe that is Wonder Woman, that she's going to take this moment to spend with this little girl and help her, and kind of like inspire her to do something other than it's not just about beating up the bad guys. It's about being that person who protects the innocent and helps those in need. I love that mindset. That was something that was really cool moments for me from this little short story.
Yeah. It's honestly, this was really, sometimes these anthology issues, when they're put together, I think in the past, and I'm going back a ways, these were kind of, I don't want to say throwaway books, but they weren't really given the kind of creative talent I think that this one was. And I do like in recent years, you and I have talked about on the show, I think since we've been doing this podcast, DC's really enjoyed, I think, a re-embracing of what a good anthology is all about. And this was a great example of that. This was a read I couldn't put down. I really enjoyed every moment of it. I liked the mix of great stories, artwork, old and new, and I think it really just had something in it for everybody. I think it just kept moving. Even if there was a story that you're like, oh, it's not really an era or an art style that appeals to me, or a story type that appeals to me, there's so much good in here that I really enjoyed this journey. And I can't wait to see what they do as more of their characters reach this 75th anniversary phase, if they do more of this kind of thing, because I think it is a great chance for creators to stretch their creative muscles in some short stories and do some things that you can't really get away with in a monthly title. Because I thought some of these stories were examples of that, where you can't really do this in a monthly book, but it worked great here.
Look at those strange little beetles. They look... Great neutron!
How you doing, Sean and Mrs. Rasul? And before I get started, I need to euthanize my voice, set up my strategy on this podcastery. All right, now that we got that done, I want to raise about the Cyborg comic. Since the New Birth, it's picked up just where the first 12 issues been left off. It didn't change a lot. The new writer, Simper, has been doing a great, excellent job on that book. And I rage for all of you Rage and Bullet fans to go check the book out. It's been pretty good. The second book I would like to rage about that I didn't think I was going to rage about was Superwoman, because I'm not a big Lois Lane fan. I always thought Superman belonged with Wonder Woman, was from the one that could keep his Kryptonian DNA intact. But listening to your podcast, you guys was raving about it, and I went and picked it up. Went back home to Minneapolis last week, seen the rest of the issues on the shelf, picked them up, added it to the pull list. So Superwoman is part of the pull now. So, and I enjoyed it. The first 3 issues was excellent. So much love to Superwoman. Third book I want to rage about is Wonder Woman. The idea of them going to the past and to the present is one of the best concepts I've ever seen done with the book. And you guys are right again on that book. You know, I'm always going to collect which I call the top 7 DC characters. I mean, you already know who those guys are. So I always get the iconic DC characters. I was going to pick up Wonder Woman regardless, but this Wonder Woman is probably some of the best stuff since Perez has been on the book. The fourth book I would like to rage about, and I was really upset about it when I first saw how Hal Jordan treated the 2 lanterns, the first 2 rookie lanterns, because he made them shed the lantern. Or when you get to issue 5, you see why he did that, because it made them gel as a team and trust one another. So that's another book that is off the change. And whoever colored the Green Lantern books, I mean, for the last 15 years, it's been the best colored book of all time. I mean, this book is just gorgeous. Every time you see it, the colors are never lacking. And my final book I like to rage about is just the Superman, the S titles in general. They are good. The Supergirl book is excellent. Superman book is excellent. Action Comics is excellent. The S Shield is back, folks. And before I leave, I need to find out where I can get a handy-dandy electric claw so I can carve through metal doors. And until DC creates polka dot kryptonite, make mine raging bullets. And you guys have a pleasant day and keep on raging.
The polka dotted kryptonite got me laughing, and his whole opening. But one of the things that I really liked about his statement, you know, he mentions, I think what we all do, right? There's certain characters that we like to collect because of the fact that we've just got a long history with them. They're a part of our collection. We don't like holes in our collection. I've done that with various characters. Even if I've dropped a book because of budget, when I go back, if I've got holes in the run, I like to fill them in because we want the complete collection, right? So in his case, when he's talking about Wonder Woman, it's so much more satisfying when it's a book that you're like, I'm going to get this anyway, but now it's great. And that's something that I think we all want. And it's something more special, I think, too, when it is a book that is in your pull list that you're like, I've been pulling this, but it's a different level now. You know, I'm pulling this because I'm that way with Batman, right? You know, it's Batman's always enjoyed some of the top creative talent ever to hit comics, but you know, when there's those special runs that come through, the Scott Snyder run is just most recently probably one of the great examples of that. And Tom King looks to be doing something with, you know, similar in his own take on it. And, you know, we've got Tinian doing, I know I'm butchering his last name, so apologies in advance, because Detective Comics has just been off the chains, very cool. We've got some creative talent right now at DC doing that with these characters, but it's always great when you're pulling your favorites and they're just delivering. And the Wonder Woman's obviously with the jump back and forth. I love the long-form exploration of her history that we're getting here. And modern telling of that just really is through the roof for me.
You know, I think Jeff Johns, Gail Simone, and or Graham Palmiotti could pull off polka dot kryptonite well. I think those people could pull it off.
Well, what are they going to do with it? I
don't know. That's why I threw out those 3 creative forces could probably give us a story that we like. Man, this polka dot kryptonite's awesome.
Now, are you saying that they would do that individually, or are you putting them in a lab together? I'm like, where's this going?
If any of those 3, I think they've got. I think those, because those are, to me, those are 3 creators that do a great job with comedic type of stories, but not that it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's still a true solid comic book story, but they can really put the funny into it. That's why I threw out those three different. If any of those three teams were to say, you know what, we're going to make Polka Dot Kryptonite, they could pull it off, and it would be a good. It would still have the weirdness and goofiness and funness that is Polka Dot Kryptonite, but it would still be an actual thing. And you're like, this is actually a good story element.
One of the things that I really liked that he was talking about too is Superwoman. Superwoman is one of those titles that I don't want. I guess I would say it was a surprise because of the direction the story went, which we already referenced on the show. I do see us revisiting this one pretty soon to have a follow-up conversation about this book. But it was, I saw one thing happening in that book, and it went, like, they had me thinking here, and then they went over here, and I think it's so much cooler because they did that. And I like titles that do that, and they're surprising. And I think sometimes when you take a book with characters that you don't expect to be the lead characters, you can do things like that and make it a unique and interesting title in and of itself. And Cyborg, we haven't talked about Cyborg since Rebirth. Can we make it a point to make that one of the books we just talk about next week?
Definitely.
I mean, I think I want to talk about Cyborg, and I think anything I'd say right now would be, I don't want to say shallow, but it wouldn't be. I really want to talk through an issue of this one. So why don't we plan next week? One of the leadoff titles we talk about is Cyborg because we haven't discussed it Rebirth. So let's just do it.
Oh, definitely.
Through the magic alchemy of nature's most awesome sources of energy, Ray Palmer, atomic physicist, becomes the atom.
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434. Or Dr. Norge on Skype. We air all voicemails that we get, and we love having you a part of our show. I want to remind everybody on our show website, RagingBullets.com. It's where you find out about the new episodes as they come out. It does feed to Twitter. It also feeds to our Facebook fan page. Besides the Facebook fan page, we have a Facebook group, and it's a wonderful Facebook group community. We share it with InfiniteComics.com. But really, beyond that, we share it with so many other podcasters, bloggers, fans of the show. There's always events and activities going on there, and it's really just run. Jeremy and the whole crew that's over there in that group have really taken it and made it something special. So I do encourage you to jump over to the group. Help those people by checking out their shows and programs and things that they're doing as well. I love the fact that we are such a community here. Recent Kickstarter that went through Apama. They met their mark, and I do feel that a lot of our listeners probably jumped on that one as well. Apama is just a great read. Jim and I are both big fans and supporters of that one. So thank you for any of you that sponsored it because of the fact that you listen to this show. If you have anything to shout out, like podcasts, blogs, Kickstarters, things like that, feel free to do it in our Facebook group community. Feel free to call into the show and shout things out as well. I do consider this a community podcast. We love interacting with our listeners. So if you got something to shout out, let us know, and we would love to put it on our podcast. We are also on Google. I have a PlayStation Network account. There's all kinds of places to obviously reach us, so please make sure to follow our podcast. I do want to once again thank everyone who does shout out our podcasts on different podcast feeds and things like that. Whether you're just letting one person know or groups of people know, every little bit helps. We don't have an advertising budget, and we do rely on the underground movement to let people know that our podcast is out there, and thank you very much for supporting us and our show sponsors. Speaking of sponsors, Jim, we are sponsored once again by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCBService.com?
They're continuing their bundles of the great DC Rebirth universe, as well as their support within bundles for the Vertigo titles, which actually 50% off for these different various bundles that they're offering really helps, and it's actually really greatly appreciated. And thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com. They offer those great deal of the weeks, but also they have the latest releases that are over there. Get Euro. Blood and Sushi is now in a trade paperback format. It's 45% off, only $8.24. They have Neil Gaiman's Midnight Days trade paperback. It's 45% off, only $9.34. I love to go over there and just kind of browse on through what the top sellers are that they have going on each week. Usually that's a great opportunity for me to see books that I missed. So I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Jim, our next episode, we're going to continue talking TV shows. So we're going to talk Legends of Tomorrow. We're also going to talk Supergirl. And we're going to continue doing a series of episodes talking about some of the DC TV that's out there to get that out there. We're also going to be talking about Rebirth, though. We're going to talk Cyborg. We're going to talk Supergirl. And we're also going to talk about Teen Titans Rebirth. So those are 3 titles that we haven't had a chance to touch on yet since the whole Rebirth cycle's begun. And we're going to talk about those next episode. So we will see you then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can 2 grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.